Okay.
It's August 15th special meeting.
Oh,
Yeah. It's kind of
well, all right then.
righty then.
Getting the meeting, talking to them.
All right. Good afternoon. Going to call to order our August 15th, 2017 special meeting. Today, we have only one item on the agenda. Who is going to, Rodney, are you going to introduce it?
Broad community infrastructure today, huh?
Nice to be at this point.
Is this on?
You're on.
Okay.
Good question.
Hi, Rod Barnes, Director of Human Resources for the county. I'm here today with Art Davis, representative from Springstead and Waters. As you recall, this is the executive search firm that we hired to conduct the search for county administrator. Purpose of today's meeting is twofold. One is to talk about the semifinalist candidates that Springstead and Waters has brought forward as a recommendation to determine whether we can narrow that pool down to a finalist pool of candidates. Second part of the conversation is if we get to a finalist candidate pool, what do we want that process to look like moving forward from here, moving into September. So I'll turn that over to Art Davis to begin the discussion.
Madam Chair and members of the Board of County Commissioners, thank you and pleased to be here again and hope you had a chance to review all of the materials. I know there was quite a bit of information, and we had 102 applicants plus. Had some people that submitted, but they didn't actually formally, they had draft submittals and people that withdrew, and so there was more interest, but they didn't get fully applied. So 102 applicants is what we ended up at, and we've shared with you the master list of names for all of those, and went through in great detail the applicants, and we were able to narrow them down to 10 what I considered probably closest to the skills and characteristics, abilities, experience that you were looking for, and with a diverse set of backgrounds. And some of the diverse information, for example, beyond ethnicity and gender and every other context of the word, was experience. And there were individuals that had local government management experience, most of them, large organizational experience, most of them, or probably 70% of them, chief administrative officer experience, a good number of them had that. Private sector experience was, I think, an issue that had been suggested, or possibly nonprofit experience, or someone other than just a complete career in county or city government. And I think there's some diversity from that perspective in here. Also, planning and growth management experience. As you remember, that was part of the brochure and contained in the profile all of these desires for what you were looking for. Most had planning or growth management related experience, financial management experience to some degree. Of course, BA degree was a minimum requirement of in the personnel policy, and a master's degree is desired. We looked at ICMA credential manager, and other certifications like CPA or civil engineer or other certifications, and I think there's candidates with all of those in this group of top 10. Florida government, local government experience. There's a significant number of these candidates that have Florida experience, and then economic development experience. And those were kind of the areas that I looked at to make sure that these top 10 candidates had a breadth of experience and really came with a a diverse set of candidates, and I think you've got a really strong group of candidates to look at. So I guess one of the Madam Chair, I'll take your lead and the commission's lead, but a lot of our clients, so that we're not talking about candidates that there's no interest in at this time, one way to narrow down the pool to really focus on those candidates where there's consensus on is exercise that I've done is simply to distribute a note card and have you jot down the top 3 or 4 candidates that you're most interested in, and we'll tabulate. And a lot of times that will immediately narrow it down to 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 candidates, and not spend a lot of time talking about 2 or 3 candidates where there's absolutely no interest in talking about those candidates anyway. So if you would want to go through an exercise like that, just and no names attributed to it, just write down what your top 3 or 4, we can say just 4, top 4 candidates, and I'll tabulate it on a sheet of paper, and I don't see a whiteboard.
Okay.
But however you choose to do
Okay.
it, we can do it verbally and try to narrow it down that way as well.
Well, first, since this is the first meeting I believe we've had since we were able, and help me out, I've been under a lot of pressure lately, so I may have forgotten something. Help me out.
No.
It's the first meeting that we've had since we talked about how we were going to do this. And so now we have all this information. So there may be more questions
Sure.
about how we got to where we are, the 10, about, anything else. And I want to open that up for questions first, because we really haven't had a chance as a body to discuss the process and kind of where we are before we immediately narrow down to the finalists. I think there might be some more questions, and I just wanted to open that up for people to discuss. Commissioner Whitmore.
I spent a good part of Saturday night going through all these, and I went through the video interviews, and then the daytime through the paperwork, but then I went through your videos of each candidate, and I wrote notes on who I thought was the strongest, but I was around, I think I'm the only one that was around when we hired, no, Robin was, Carlos Bucaras. He's our port director, and he didn't make the finalist list. And
Oh, you mean
Mike-
for the port when he was running? I thought you meant this list. You threw me off. Sorry, Carol. I was like,
that's what I'm saying, right?
Sorry.
Our port chair just had a heart
I
attack.
did. I just had a heart attack.
No, she,
Sorry.
anyway.
Thank you.
So, Michael Gallen had found this candidate, Carlos Bucaras, and he didn't get his paperwork in time. He was in Argentina, I think it was, and so we opened it up because it is our rules, and we allowed him to be included. Actually, he ended up getting the job. So these are good guidelines that you have, but I think if there's others that we may want to include, I think we should be able to do that, because I thought there was 2 employees that I think that work for us that at least should be given an opportunity to go through the process, just kind of like what we did with the county attorney. We had employees, the employed attorneys were also available, and mine was Danny Hopkins and John Barnott. Both of them had managerial experience with employees. I don't know how anybody else feels, and they may not make it through the cut, but they were brave enough to put their hat in, and they did have managerial experience over departments. Danny used to be in charge years ago, and then he came back into the role he is now. But I never got an opportunity to look at his resume, or actually John's. But at least I'd like to be able to include those if we could.
Okay. Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, I spent Saturday, in fact, I ended up with a massive headache because all day Saturday, that's all I did was sit and read resumes and look at webinars and until I was just, overwhelmed with it all. I do think that we've got some good candidates here. However, I would agree with what Commissioner Whitmore said. For our employees to take that step, then I think we need to let them go through the process. The question that I actually had, Art, for you was if you could go through and just give us a little bit more insight as to how you narrowed it down and really picked the candidates that you did. I think we've got some strong candidates, not saying we don't, but, you know, I'm just curious as to that process, how you do that.
Well, I mean, it's subjective on my part. You look at the kinds of, the strengths and the skills and experience, and that I just went over a list of those things that I think were important, and candidates that met the majority or a big part of those characteristics
You need
and
to speak
experience.
more closely to the microphone so people can hear you a little
Our
better.
chairman just did.
The candidates that met most closely with those areas of experience and in local government, you know, having managed larger organizations, chief administrative officer experience, in charge of, you know, understands and knows bond rating agencies and has dealt with those kinds of issues before, growth management related experience, you know, economic development experience, those kinds of things. And so I went through all 102 resumes and looked at those, and the ones that did not either meet those, you know, to a great degree, those areas, or if there was something that was a red flag to me, if they were moving from job to job every couple of years, that's a red flag to me, and not something that I would bring forward to you. That you know, I think you would like some confidence that whoever is you're looking at has some stability and the ability to stay for the longer term if you hire them, and or if there's you know, if they've been in our system in the past and we've had prior experience and the experience wasn't good, I didn't bring them forward. So that's kind of a item applicant by applicant review of those, and I would go through and set those to the side that either didn't meet the requirements or were ones that had concerns about, and then narrowed them down to a group of probably 23 or so that had some met most or most closely met the qualifications as you were looking for, and then narrowed it down from those 22, 23 numbers down to 10. And you know, it's a long, arduous process to go through all of those, and some you know, have been in a number of positions and locations and of similar sized organizations, but I also anticipated that if someone had been through 3 or 4 or 5 separations from prior local governments, that's an indicator that it might not be a good fit for what you're looking for. So I didn't move them forward in the process.
You know, for me, even though we only had 10, when you sit there and you go through the 10, it's almost overwhelming even with that. So I'm glad that you stopped it at 10, because it was a lot to try and take in. But I was just curious. I wanted to make sure that I kind of had a good feel for what you were looking for and what your thoughts were, et cetera. I do like the idea that I think, Rod, you might have, or maybe Art, you did. You mentioned about, you know, just putting down on a piece of paper the 3 or 4 that, you know, we see individually as finalists. I think that's a great idea. And I don't know if I need to say this or not, but there is one of the finalists that is in this list that I have already met previously. I don't know if you were involved, Art, or not, at the Lakewood Ranch Town Hall when the executive director for the Lakewood Ranch Town Hall was selected. He was actually, it was between 2 people, and he was one of them. So I just wanted to mention that. Yes, his name is Randall Vosberg. Vosberg.
He's an assistant county manager.
Yes,
in
and-
fairly local.
Yeah, and I did
90
speak with
minutes away.
him when he was going through that process, just so everybody knows that I wanted to be
You know,
above
another
board.
thing, there had been some expressed desire to, that you would be open to non-traditional candidates. And so there's 2 or 3 on here that I would consider. A gentleman from, who has very, very high-level
Oh, yeah.
management experience from the state of Connecticut,
Connecticut.
who's now been in the private sector in Florida
Yeah.
and been part of a startup firm and just recently sold the firm that he's with. Salary is not an issue for him. As he said to me, this would be his last position for the next 10 or 15 years, as long as you would have him. But he is, he has been at the highest levels of state government and at the same time oversaw, because of the responsibility, the position he was in, he oversaw local government economic development for the state of Connecticut. They have no counties in Connecticut, so they were essentially providing a lot of the county functions in the role he was in as the state budget director slash OPM executive director. And both he and the governor worked very closely. He was appointed by the governor in Connecticut. He had dealt with bond rating agencies, he dealt with employee and union and labor negotiations. He had a lot of experience that I felt like was transferable, even though he had no local government experience. He had a lot of knowledge of local government and finances. And so there's an example that I felt like you were really wanting to look at some non-traditional candidates, and that was one. And then there's another one that's an assistant city manager for a number of years in a community, just in local community here in the region. And he had been, he's a civil engineer and had actually worked as on a lot of development related and growth management, and he worked in the private sector for about 10 or 12 years before he started working for cities and counties, or for his community. And my sense, he understands development, he's worked in the private sector, he understands the performance measurement and the kind of the private sector view. So again, there was a non-traditional candidate that has a good breadth of experience in the public sector, but has that other experience as well, which my impression was that was something that you were very receptive and even would seek that kind of applicant. Have an applicant from North Carolina.
Awesome.
An assistant county manager, deputy county manager, that's been in some very responsible positions, very well thought of from my contacts of people that know him. He has not been in the private sector, but has been at the highest levels of city and county government, and is very well thought of and very progressive, and believes in performance management, or believes in measuring performance and comparative analytics and really measuring performance is what I'm trying to say, and which is something that I think you look, a lot of candidates in the private sector have that focus, but you have many good public sector managers that are focused and beginning to develop their skill set in those areas as well, which is something I heard early on from you all was important to you. We have one of the larger cities in the state of Florida, a city manager for one of the largest cities that's got a really tremendous track record for turning around the financial status and where they've come from some really difficult times back in the mid 2000s and late 2010 area, and has really done a great job, I think, of turning around some of the things that they've been doing, and has broad experience in both with county government and city government, and in fact, very knowledgeable about this county and really wants to be here. Again, the salary thing is not an issue for him. He wants to get back into the Florida retirement system, which you all are a part of, which he has not been a part of recently for years, but mostly he wanted to be a part of this situation, so.
And Art, if I may, Madam Chair.
Sure.
I believe this gentleman that you're referring to actually was in his private life, before all of his government experience, he was a purchasing agent for a hospital. He was also a salesman, sold cars. Find that very interesting. And as another applicant that we have as well, he was also a soldier in the U.S.
Yeah,
Army and was
veteran.
in Desert Shield and
Yep.
Desert Storm.
Is that Alfonso?
Miami.
Okay, I got him.
Yeah. So,
Miami.
interesting backgrounds on so many applicants, yeah.
Well, and the two candidates that know each other quite well, Alice Robertson.
Alice and Alfonso,
who's a dynamo in downtown revitalization with the Miami, I believe it's Miami Development Authority.
Right.
Going on memory there.
It is.
They've done some pretty outstanding work, and she has both county and I believe county and possibly city experience on addition to her downtown development authority work, which, they've gotten really great reviews with some of the work they're doing. So, and that's just a touch of how I looked at trying to make it a diverse candidate pool, yet exceptionally strong in their qualifications. Just because I sensed you wanted to see, kind of touch as many areas and get as much diversity of candidates as possible. So,
Okay. Well, the county attorney would probably say that there will be no secret balloting, that if we're going to narrow this.
put your names on it.
No. If we're going to narrow this down, I assume we're going to have to do it like we do when we appoint people to a board. We're going to have a nomination, and we're going to have to vote on it.
Before you do that,
I don't think that's fair.
we can still track. Would be interesting is to, if you put your name on a piece of paper, put the names on it, simply then list the names up there so that nobody knows what the other people are saying until I list them up for you. Then it's the candidates pool is being looked at and evaluated not by who's putting forth the names, but by anonymously until I kind
Until
of put
he-
publicly
right.
who submitted those names. And then there might be consensus amongst everyone as to who put forth those names.
Okay.
And that's
record.
not a secret pool.
Okay. Let's, I'm going to wait for the county attorney to opine about how the best way to do this. Because, yes, it will be public record, but I'm not sure. I guess I don't see the negative of knowing.
I don't think that is a negative, what Art
But I'm
said.
not, I'm
Above
going to go
board.
through the questions, and we'll go ahead and figure this out. I'm going to.
Okay, it's your process,
Sure.
however you like to do it.
Thank you. Well, I've never done it before, so I'm just winging it. But Commissioner Johnson, did you want to say anything at this
No,
time?
not at this point. I'll reserve till we get a little
Commissioner
farther down
DeSabatino.
the road.
Yeah, I'm right now agreeing with Commissioner Ball and Whitmore. Also, if I could do one step further, there were 4 county employees that submitted theirs. So,
Three.
Two with
Thought there were
management. There was 3.
3,
Simone.
I believe there was 4.
4.
There.
There
You
were
had
4
you had
candidates.
Hopkins,
Yeah.
Right.
Barnott.
Alexandra, Simone, and who's the other one then?
Yeah, I only knew 3.
Oh, it was a guy I didn't know.
Gregory Davis.
Yeah, right.
So there
I
were
missed
4
that.
Davis.
that went through the process.
Oh.
So I'm just throwing this out if you wanted to just include all those from within that applied as a courtesy, and then come up with our list. And then Commissioner Whitmore touched on something that Commissioner Gallen came upon someone, and
You were here. You and I voted against him, I think. Yeah. Because he didn't go through the process.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to do this at this time. I have a name of someone that I ran into yesterday that I've worked with in another organization. And I just quietly asked him if he's mentioned about the list. And was going to, but his job now, he felt uncomfortable. And so I think he would be great as well. I don't know the other ones, but I don't know if it can be added because the deadline has passed.
Well, the deadline's not a deadline. It was a first review. We did that purposefully. If
Okay.
someone submitted later, we wanted to be able to keep the
Okay.
process open for you all to consider. But I would only encourage you as a body, collective body, that if you bring in somebody that they need to go through the same rigors and the same
Absolutely.
process, so that we would need to get them to do a candidate questionnaire. We would
Okay.
need to get them to do some of that, the video interview, for example. They should go through all of the same process that these initial 10 that we forwarded
So
to you.
do I just give this to you?
Well, I mean, it's up
it to
to
them.
you as a group to decide if you want to.
Well, I don't
that.
want to give it out unless the group,
Well, what are we actually trying to accomplish today? Were we trying to get to 3 to 5?
Okay.
Yes.
That's, yeah, there wasn't a whole, okay, and I'm just gonna stop. So one at a time. That's why I said it's open to questions, because I knew we'd not had any discussion. We knew this stuff was coming out. That's as far as we've gotten. There was no direction that I knew of. Now, maybe I didn't look at my agenda closely enough. Was not aware that we were making a decision today on semifinalists and how many. But that is what's stated in our background information. So I want to make sure that we all understand the process. I think we all want to agree on what the process is, because so for what I'm hearing, Robin has someone who wants to apply. So when is the deadline?
But Madam
to make
Chair, in all
application?
fairness, the timeline that Rod gave to all of us, I mean, if you look at that timeline, this is the time with Art being here, today and tomorrow, I think it was, am I correct on that?
Today.
To give us the opportunity to break it down further so that the meetings and so forth can get scheduled with all the commissioners and the
interviews,
public,
yeah.
whatever we decide at the Crosley and so forth, to get us ready for that next step. So yes, ma'am, if you look at the timeline, that was my understanding of what today and tomorrow were supposed to be.
Well, and you don't have to make,
It's not tomorrow.
I'm sorry, not tomorrow.
you don't have to
We had
make a
talked about that at
decision
one time.
today.
Okay.
The reason we do a first review deadline, because sometimes people are on vacation or they're in a very stressful job. They find out about the application at a very late notice, and we want them to be able to get it in and for you to be able to consider that. So we call it a first review deadline, or a first review date, but it doesn't mean that you may decide through the whole process you don't like any of the candidates and you want to keep it open. And so we would go back. That leaves us the opportunity to go back and revisit the candidates that you've currently got, as well as continue to take in existing applicants. So we try not to shut down the process so that you have to completely restart the process.
like a procurement process.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then I guess I want to ask my board, are you okay with keeping the application process open in case one of you get a resume from somebody, and up until what point, I guess is the question I would
They need
ask.
to be able to do all the work, and we need to be able to review
Right.
that for you. That's part of our guarantee. We have to feel comfortable that they have the experience and the competence and the ability
have it with me.
to be here for a minimum of 2 years if you hire them, or we're going to have concern about forwarding them as a recommended candidate.
We
And,
just want the rules all, I mean, this is government. We want the rules all to be the same
Right.
for everyone.
Exactly. And so typically, most clients, they use that first review deadline as,
The deadline.
they'll consider other applicants if they don't find the right candidate in the first group that they look at. But that doesn't mean you have to do that. It's just what most of our clients do. They consider the people that get it in by that first review deadline as the first group of candidates that they're going to look at. But, you know, if you want to look at additional candidates, we can do that. I just strongly encourage that we've got to have them go through the exact same process that all the other candidates have gone through in the semifinalist group, if you want to consider them as a semifinalist. And then the thought was that if you can narrow it down, either today or at a subsequent meeting, that we identify the dates for possible interviews. I have a prototype, kind of a draft outline of possible interview schedule based on what I've heard from you before, of wanting some public input and a public input process, and wanting to have a process that is not only open and transparent, but you get to fully vet the candidates and they get to fully vet the county and take a structured tour and all those kinds of things. So we can talk about that later. But in order to do that, we also, I think the tentative dates that at least I had talked to Rod about, and I think he had checked with you all about the 21st and 22nd of September, that would give us enough time to do all the candidate background checks, the criminal, civil, driving record, sexual predator list, the job verification. I mean, we do the full spectrum of background checks, including academic verification on their degrees, and we would do all that. Plus, we do reference checks. Plus, we would have, if you would like to do it, we have a kind of a personality profile test that we would have them do, and just to give you more information to make that final judgment on. And my suggestion is to narrow it to 3 to 4 candidates. If you can't narrow it down to 4, 5 at the most, but any more than 5, it's just a long couple of days for you all to sit through that many interviews, if you're spending the time that it takes to really vet the candidates. So, but typically people interview 3 to 4 candidates, sometimes 5. And so that's, but
Okay, well, then
if you wanted to wait until next week to make a final decision, you can do that too.
Nope, don't want to slow this
Let's
down.
go.
And but we have 2 new curveballs that have been thrown in here, and I want to resolve these issues today as we go forward. One was, do we add all the county employees that applied to this to the point where they're going to be in the next round?
No.
The question is,
No.
what is the pleasure of the board on that? I'll take
ask each of us?
comments
Yeah.
Do we
on
need a
that.
motion?
Oh, no.
or-
No, let's
No,
ask
let's
each of
just
them.
hear
We're on
everyone
the
out.
board.
And maybe,
Okay.
just maybe go down the line.
Yeah,
Okay. Charles, I'll go ahead and hear you out.
Madam
on that
Chair,
question, right?
Yeah, he was up to.
the 2 employees that was mentioned, that I'm hearing 4, but the 2 employees that I think should be recommended to go to the round is Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Barnott. I don't know how in the world we get to 3 or 4 today. That's not going to happen. I think Mr. Barnott and Mr. Hopkins should be added to the finalists list. As you are aware of, that we're eventually, whoever the new county administrator is going to be looking for 2 deputies at least, maybe. So that's potential there also. So I support Mr. Barnott and Mr. Hopkins being added. I would not support anybody who's been here 2, 3, or 4 years. Even going into a finalist list as being the potential for the county administrator. And so the protocol should be at least those 2 should be put into the finalists. I don't see us getting to 3, 4, 5 today. I want the county attorney please to weigh in before I say what I need to say, because I see a catch-22 coming with the procedure, how we're trying to narrow it down.
Are
Okay.
you going down the line?
We have a recommendation, and I guess I'm going to try to get
That's a
consensus
motion.
before okay, I've got a motion to have Mr. Hopkins and Mr. Barnett added to the list. It
Second.
doesn't exist yet, but added to the list.
I'll
All
second
right, we have a
this.
Second and a
motion and
double
a second.
second.
Can I clarify?
Yes?
Added to the list to be considered for narrowing down, or added to be interviewed?
Added to the be interviewed list.
Interview
Correct.
list is my motion.
Okay, so that
So if it's 4, 5, 6, or 7, my motion is that those 2,
would be on top of whatever others are narrowed down.
absolutely
Okay.
correct.
And we'd like their resumes, please.
Yes.
And would you agree as a body that they would go through the same
Absolutely.
need to fill out all the materials and do all the same, go back and do the interviews on video and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think what he's saying is add them to the 10. So whatever process the 10 went through, they have to go through the same process. So they're part of the,
10.
now we didn't, now we had 10, now we have 12. We added those two.
Okay.
Is that, agree with you?
That absolutely is my motion, unless Mr. Davis finds some way out in left field. I expect those two with my motion to be in the interviewing process. They are already employees here. Certainly when you talk about suits and all that kind of stuff, everybody here been sued. You know, Mr. Barnett been sued. So I'm just saying, and individually in his capacity, so I don't want any of these little hang-ups things to take place. If they're not qualified to be here now, certainly they shouldn't be here.
Okay, I just
I
want to make
just want to
sure
clarify,
the motion is to make, they are the,
Part of the
to be
10.
interviewed, not necessarily part of the top 10.
No.
no.
Right
They
now,
are
we're
part
putting
of
them on the
the,
10.
they are part of the top 10. I just
to be
said
part
that
of this top 10 or 12. We haven't
the
narrowed
top
it down.
10 went to 12.
Right.
Okay.
But
Correct.
because we're at this process, we have 10, we're adding 2, we have 12.
We have
But we
12.
have to have them go through the exact same steps that 10 went through. We're not trying to skip any of the process.
That's
It's
correct.
just that today, since we're finally talking about it as a board, we're agreeing as a board, if the vote passes, to add these two. And
Okay.
have to do everything, but they're in the top 12.
Okay.
Okay?
Seconder, I just wanted to clarify, the only reason why those two is because they've both been directors at some point.
Have
That's
management
correct.
background.
And they're managers currently, but Danny was years ago the director of Parks and Rec, and I don't know what, and then wherever he went before, I think he was something else.
I'm fine with Mr. Hopkins.
But I
That's,
don't have the resume, so.
that's why I'm fine with Mr. Hopkins. That's why I mentioned those two. I'm aware of the other two individuals, but I don't think they should be listed into this category.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion. Quintana, you got that? And a second. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Chair votes aye, motion passes. See, we are getting something done. We're making
Now does he want to
progress.
increase his work?
It's not getting better, it's growing.
You should have been with the port.
The second question that we have before us that we have to decide is whether or not Robin's person that she found, whether that person should be thrown in to the list at this time. I guess to make our list 12 to 13, I guess, but they'd have to go through it. So, and, you know, Robin, you do know if this person goes in, they have to be public. It has to be
Right.
public. Nobody
Right.
gets to be
That's
quiet.
why I've kept it to myself for now.
Till now. Well, that's probably safe. So what are the thoughts on that? Commissioner Whitmore?
I think that we've got enough on our plate with the 12. I think we should, like somebody just said, Art said, if we're seeing that we don't like what we're seeing, then that person, we can, because we always said if it didn't work out, we were always going to re-advertise. We only got 4 months to go through this because Sarasota County is looking for a county administrator also. We have 4 months to find, to hire somebody before Ed leaves. And so we need to narrow it down today, too, if there's any way we can, even if it's top 5 or 6, at least eliminate 50% of them.
Commissioner DeSabatino?
Yeah, and I agree. So what I will do is, since the process is going to stay open, I will keep this to myself, notify that person that if they want to go through the official
call me.
process, to call you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
And I can
this is
gather
not
the
public
information.
record. Okay,
Okay, so no need for a motion.
okay.
All right, questions about, I'm going to ask Mickey. I don't, personally, I don't have a problem with narrowing this down further. I think we're probably going to be narrowing it down to 6. That's kind of my guess, because we just added 2.
Right.
I was focusing on 4, trying to narrow it down to 4. We've added 2.
I got it at 4.
Because you're a county employee, you got slid in. And so, but now for the 4, what would be the process to get to that if people wanted to do that today? What would be the process for us to get to that 4?
We
Okay.
choose.
Let me ask a question, maybe. You're just staring at me.
You
I
vote.
have a problem following the process that he suggested where we write down our 4, put our names on them, and then they get tabulated. Do you have a problem with that?
No, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is secret balloting. Secret balloting will be a no-no,
This
with
is
all
not-
due respect to Mr. Davis.
It's not a secret ballot.
Well, with all due respect, a secret ballot is what you initially suggested.
He
We've
changed
now
it.
evolved, such that commissioners, it's been suggested that commissioners will write down on a sheet of paper, their name, each commissioner's name should appear at the top of that sheet of paper, with today's date on it, and then each of the commissioners can list, their top tier or whatever. Those will be collected, and then they will be publicly announced here in this session today.
With not our, I mean, they'll have our name, but he said he's,
I was just gonna tabulate them on a
right,
big
all the,
board.
but we don't, and then our name is on it for later. You don't
Yeah,
have to
it's-
publicly say our name right now. We're just
It's
tabulating.
public record.
He's
No,
gonna have
no,
this.
you need to publicly say your name right now.
That's fine.
You need to publicly say your name right now.
Where is that written?
Yeah.
That is that is part of the Sunshine Law. There's at least one Attorney General, as I recall, that is Attorney General opinion on the subject of secret ballots. It's no different from any other vote. Each commissioner is identified as he or she casts his vote either yea or nay on any given issue. A commissioner cannot shield his or her identity in terms of the nature of their vote, and so that is my advice.
Okay.
Okay, all right. How do you feel? Let's, everybody hit their buttons. Let's hear how you feel about this process. Can we get to this today? Commissioner Whitmore?
Okay, here's my idea.
I don't,
Since we are gonna add the 2 to be interviewed, that's already a given. So we have 12. So my recommendation would be for us to do our ballot, whatever, and we can pick 6. And the reason why is we've narrowed the list down to 50%, and we've already picked our top ones on the list, the book that's given to us, including the other 2 employees. So it would be the top 6
6 total.
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 And then, so we've eliminated 50% right now, and that's a start.
that's kind of where I was as well.
We interviewed a lot more for the port, and then we ended up not even picking them, so.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Johnson?
I guess my recommendation or thought on, rather than going through the balloting, is just starting with the first one and just going down and just
Making
voting
the
them up
list.
and down, right up here on the dais, and then we don't have to go
Okay.
through the
Here's my
whole
list.
thing, and then we'll
We can do
get
it.
But then
down.
you'll get to
Well-
6 before the end of the list.
Then I think, and I'm, personally, I'd like to open up the list and get another group of people in. I'm not that, impressed, with what's in front of us. I'd like to
one
see,
that I liked.
more people. There's 1 or 2, but it just, like I say, the rest of them seem to me to be primarily very bureaucratic. I'm obviously the guy who, spoke with Rod about getting the fact that I wanted somebody with a lot of business experience, along with public administration, and I just don't see that here with the exception of probably one guy. And that's, again, that's just me talking, but I think, to get their process going, we ought to, they've done a lot of work to get us to these 10 people, so let's find out who the short list is from
Okay.
these 10. And we know we have the 2 staff employees that we're gonna add to the list.
So 4.
And then it's up to my Patriots here as to whether they want to sit there and have them bring us back some more people to look at.
Madam Chair, if I might, Commissioner Johnson's suggestion seems quite practical to me, and it seems quite easily doable to me. You've got a list of 12 now. We'll list them in alphabetical order. We've got 2 new names injected, so list them in alphabetical order. Then just simply go down the list. Art will call out the name.
And we'll
This
raise our
board
hand.
will
You're talking
then,
about the one that's in the blue that are the finalists,
this board
correct?
will then, by a show of hands,
Yeah.
will say, and you got to decide what the vote's going to be. We want them to stay on the list, or we want to shed them from the list, okay? And so the chairwoman can call for a vote. Do you want this person to stay on the list? If he or she gets 4 more votes,
Yeah, let's just see.
that person stays on the list, and you're moving on down the
It
list.
has, okay, for each
All
one.
right, I want
Okay.
to make sure the goal is
Okay.
clear, that you only get to vote 4 times. Are we in agreement?
No,
That- that
No.
we already have,
Raise our hands for each one.
No.
each one gets a vote.
Just let, yeah.
Each candidate will get an up or down vote in terms of whether they will stay on the list. Then you've got a shorter list.
Right,
Right.
50%.
Then you can do that process a second time
Right.
to see if you want to if you want to pare down that shorter list even further.
I think we need new commissioners.
Let's try
Otherwise,
it.
you'll get to
Let's try
6
that. See, if
halfway
worse
through
comes
the
to worse,
alphabet.
All right.
we just have 12.
Okay. Questions or comments on what we've just heard?
No.
Commissioner Smith?
Do it.
Madam Chair, I heard the word 6 or 7, whatever.
Yes.
It's easy for us to move forward as individual commissioners and select one person, some of us may have 2, 3 to that one name, and start deleting the list at that point. Each commissioner come up with one name, who they want as their first, and some may have the same name, and you at least at the minimum, cut it halfway.
That's what we just are doing. We're all,
That's a
No, we're
problem.
voting each one, but we may never agree.
oh,
Well,
each
we'll
commissioner
go
pick
down.
one?
No, we'll get down.
You know how that works up here.
Try it. Let's just.
And let me
That's why I was
add,
trying to define how many votes you get, because when we vote for people to be on a board, we don't get an unlimited number of votes.
Why don't we just read our
I'm a little
list?
confused by the unlimited number of
Let's
votes.
just read our
it's a
list.
series of 12 votes.
They had the-
All
the-
commissioners participating in
the
all
board, they
12
wrote the
votes.
names down.
Let me say this as well. The names Barnott and Hopkins
automatic.
have an asterisk beside them,
Right,
okay?
they're automatic.
If either of those 2 gentlemen makes it into your finalist list today, you have an asterisk. And the asterisk is that they successfully complete Mr. Davis's protocol, that they successfully complete the background check, et cetera, et cetera. So,
All right, well, we have a process. We're going to go for it.
So we
We're going to
just-
go ahead and give
should we
this a
read our
shot.
list?
No?
I haven't wrote this yet.
Mr. Barnes looks like he's got a question for us.
We're gonna have to try to talk one at a time. We've never done it before, one at a time. Go ahead, Rod.
I think the only concern that I have right now is in adding these 2 additional candidates, the material that you got on the 10 candidates also included a candidate questionnaire for you to evaluate.
I didn't do that.
And I don't think we have that with these 2 candidates.
That's all right, I
but
didn't do it
We,
anyway.
get it.
we can get that
Yeah.
from them in the next week or so. They'll turn it, if they're interested, they'll turn it around.
Right.
and-
May I say
And
something,
Can I
Madam Chair?
clarify? I mean, what I believe we did with that
That's what I'm
vote
saying,
is we put them in
Automatic.
this same group. They got to give us all the same information the other people gave us, but because they're county employees, because of their background in management and their experience here, this board unanimously agreed to put them in the shortlist.
Right.
They're in.
They're in.
We're going to vote again, I guess, according to Mickey. I'm not sure why we have to.
We don't.
They're
Thank you.
in.
Me
Voted on
too.
them.
All right, y'all agree they're in?
They're in. We're not, yeah.
We're not even gonna vote on it. They're in. You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Clear?
Unless there's something in the background we need to know about.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and that,
No, I
you
know.
know,
I know.
we will do the serious scrutinizing of backgrounds when you narrow down the candidates to those you're going to interview. and
Well,
those
these
will
are
be
the
shared
2,
with
so you can start.
They're in.
Once
They're
they
in.
start.
They're seriously in. And if there's something that we need to know, you'll give it to us. So,
Yeah, we-
okay, well, let's go through the other 10
Okay?
and let's do the voting on the other 10. Are we okay with that,
We
everybody?
need a list then.
Well,
I
they're
got
gonna
my
read
list.
off.
I'm voting off
Have
of
my
it.
Call
own.
wake me up when you decide what you're
10,
doing.
so
This
it'll
is
make no
not that
difference, one by
complicated.
one.
No, he's
Going
gonna
to-
read
He's
the
going to
10.
read them one at a time, and we're going to vote whether we want them in for the next phase or not.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Well, you're right. I think they got to.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yeah, we've never done it this way, so we're going to have,
gonna
everybody's
get
going to have to be a little bit patient with the process. We have a recommendation from our county attorney to go through and vote on them one by one. Point of order, Ms.
Madam
Whitmore.
Chair. Well, I actually hit my button too, in case it wasn't a point of order.
Me too, and somebody keeps taking me off.
Okay, so really, we are gonna pick 4 out of this book, because we've already guaranteed 2 was our employees, so that's out of the 6, 50%. So we're gonna look at possibly 4. Some of us have already done our homework for hours and picked the top ones that we wanted to have a list. Why can't each of us read our list, and then that's what he was asking, that we were gonna turn it into him, and he'd have a group of names and see who got the most on their list, and if we all agreed. For all of us that did our, that went through this all weekend, I already know who the top 4 of are mine that I'm gonna vote, and I added 2 for the other 2 employees. So I know my top 4 in this book. So why should I go through each one? Because, we all should know the top ones that we looked at.
Okay.
Like, Steve doesn't.
Really wasn't a point of order. Really was not a point of order, but I agree,
Rang
you
my
pushed
bell.
your button.
Yeah, I did.
My button's
ball.
on. Thank you. Guys, this really is not that difficult. It's a very easy process. You were given the applications earlier. You either like some of the finalists or you don't. If there's some that you like, we know that now we've added 2 more. Art, I don't expect you to go back and do everything with these 2 new ones that you did in getting the finalists together. I don't know that that's possible, really, on the timeline that we're on. But I mean, obviously, I know the application, et cetera, and the interviews, that go forward. But I would certainly think that we as commissioners can each come up with 2, 3. I mean, I have 3 finalists that we have here that, we can vote on to move this process forward. That was the reason I'm looking at Rodney's timeline, and it specifically states, Tuesday afternoon, August the 15th, consultant meets with the Board of County Commissioners and recommends semifinalist. Commissioners select finalist for on-site interviews and finalize public input process.
Right. We gotta do it.
Make a decision, commissioners. We can do it and come up with 4 people. I guess 4 if you want. You don't have to come up with 4 because we already have 2. So, make your decisions and let's move forward.
I also spent a ton of time going over all of these and spent last night narrowing it down to what I thought was going to be 4.
Oh, good.
It wasn't stated anywhere how many,
That's right. That's
but
what
I
I'm saying.
assumed it was 4. I'm not
I
sure
have
exactly
4.
why. I had 4. They didn't include the 2 because I was, silly me, following the rules. I went with what was there. And so that's where I came up with 4. We've already voted that the 2 are in. Now we got to come up with 4 more. How we actually do that, I think at this point, I would prefer, since I got my list done, my name's on it, handing it in to them
Yeah.
and let them tally it.
Put your name on it.
There is not a problem with that.
It's not that difficult.
What do
I've
y'all have
got
a
it
problem
down.
with that?
No,
I'm gonna date it and time
Names or
it.
3?
How many,
How
4?
many do you want?
We got to agree to how many names. That's
4.
what.
4?
but Steve may only have 1, so.
Steve's not gonna have any. Oh no, you are gonna have 1, aren't you?
You can have up
Any-
to 4.
4,
That a rule?
We got
and we're
your
gonna
guy on it.
write it out and obviously keep the record for
Date
the
and
public
time.
record and state who said what, but at least show you a list of the names that there seems to be consensus for narrowing down.
Good enough?
Put date and time for
I
public
put the
record.
time, my name and initial.
At the top of each sheet of paper should appear the commissioner's name and today's date.
And time.
And then you will place on that sheet of paper a maximum of 4 names
6.
from the 10 that are before you today.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and before we turn in our slips of paper, should we take public comment? In case somebody wants to really
Yes.
convince us.
You
that's
should
kind of
invite
what I-
think
public
so.
comment, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, to make certain that we're clear, I want to make certain I'm clear in my mind. Messrs. Barnott and Hopkins are automatically in the top 6, correct?
Correct.
Such that neither of those names will appear on any of the slips that you are about to submit. Agreed?
Correct.
Agreed.
Go from
Okay.
10 to
I
6.
put a
All
hyphen,
right.
a star, so I guess get rid
So
of
this
it.
will be a maximum of 4 names on each commissioner's lists. None of those names will be either Barnott or Hopkins.
Okay.
Well, if they're on it, then we have to
They're
do a
already
new
in.
list.
Is
Erase
that
it.
clear? Clear? Mr. Barnes?
There is,
They are
whatever.
in to eventually constitute a top 6.
Correct.
Correct.
Do you have any concerns about how this process is being conducted? You look concerned, Rod, that's why I asked.
This looks vague. You look shell shocked. It'll be fine.
You blame him?
And so
am
before
I.
commissioners pass in their individual sheets, we should take public comment.
Yes. Any concerns, comments?
I've already expressed my concern.
Okay. I'm sorry, I don't remember what they are. Okay. I'm going to open up to public comment. Anyone who'd like to address the board on these process for narrowing down our candidates for county administrator. Please state your name and you'll have 3 minutes to address the board.
Catherine Edwards, thank you very much.
Student council president.
The list of requirements, is that public information?
What is it?
Everything was public information, yes. The entire brochure request and
Is online.
was online, so,
Okay. I didn't see it linked on today's
sorry, I'm not
agenda,
supposed to
excuse me.
comment. Just go ahead.
With respect to Dee Sabatino's, thank you, cloaked candidate, after this vote, Commissioner Dee Sabatino's candidate could still apply and get in. That's inherently unfair to the 10 who already have their
I
their
agree.
applications in.
Well, we cut it down on top of
That
that.
happened at the port.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to address the board on this process?
I agree with her comment about adding Commissioner
Please state your
DeSabat.
name for the record.
Barbara Angelucci, Bradenton, Florida. I agree that Robin's future or possible candidate needs to be added, as these two have been added. And then those 3 will go through the rigorous process before they even get in to see if they're semifinalists. You cannot include these 2 right into semifinalists. And I know Mr. Palmer said you won't be voting on the other 2, but I think it's time that we had a clean sweep. And we looked at people that maybe the gentleman from North Carolina, but I think this woman, basically from Miami, Alice, she rocks. You need to take a good look at her resume. Women know how to manage and do things, and she has done tremendous things. So basically, I would like to see new blood outside of Florida, with the exception of Alice from Miami. And I've polled a lot of the citizens, and they all agree. We need to clean things out. And more or less, what I liked about Alice, among her other qualities, was she restored community trust. And this is what we need, because right now, the citizens do not trust the county. Thank you very much.
Madam,
Now, let's finish public comment before other comments. Any other comments from any member of the public?
Okay, we're going to close public comment. Commissioner Smith?
Yes, Madam Chair, the question of we're cutting it down to 6. The individual that Commissioner DeSabatino is talking about would not be included
Right.
and actually would not be able to apply.
Oh,
No,
that's-
can still apply, apparently, if the whole thing, the way I understand it, if we get down from the 6 and we say we don't like any of them, we'd start all over, their
Right.
name would be in the group.
Okay, but not as of today, if we go down to 6, it would not be included. My last question on that, I do have some of the same concerns as Commissioner Johnson. The fact is that I'm considering submitting only 2 names, not 4. And that's my position on that. I agree with a lot of things that he mentioned. I'm also looking at population. You don't have close to the same population we have. I'm not going to too much consider you, so I maybe just submitting 2 names. I just want to state that case is not an error, and I came close, but to the last spokesperson, I kind of agree with some of the names was mentioned, and I'll be supporting 2 names.
Okay, great.
So we're
Commissioner
gonna
Ball?
hand them in?
Yeah, the only problem that I have with the person, whomever it is that Robin has mentioned, is that, out of the 102 or so
Never even
that
applied.
applied, this person was not one of them. And we made no secret that this was happening, that we were looking for applications. So I think that is an issue, looking at it from that aspect. I think we've got some qualified candidates here. We'll see how the vote goes, but I think we need to move on. The bottom line is, I think it would not be fair, I do agree, that to bring someone in after today that has not been in the process at all is not appropriate. So, I think we need to move forward with our vote and get this process moving.
Commissioner Whitmore.
I think Robin also agreed with us, since he hadn't even applied, that if it doesn't work out, this person, whoever it is, can apply, because we always said if we didn't like what we had, we will move forward. I just saw Danny Hopkins, he had no idea at all that I was gonna bring his name up. I think he just left. I think he got scared.
Probably scared him to
But,
death.
anyway,
I didn't even know he had applied.
I just happened to see it this weekend, but, yeah. Anyway, we'll see
going
what
to
happens, but I would encourage everybody, if they could consider, 4. Oh, there he is. Stay out if I were you. No, I'm teasing.
Oh, yeah,
No, I'm totally teasing. It would be nice if we had 4, so at least we can start moving forward and getting through these, but I'm ready to give my names out. Let's start moving.
Okay.
Pass them down, or are you coming to get them, Rodney?
T. Sabatino.
I have a question
Sure,
for, would it be an issue with me just doing 2?
No, will you please come pick
was
them
fine.
up? This has got to be, I don't know why.
Yeah, she's
maximum
taking-
of 4
I'm not
names.
looking. You think I'm cheating?
Well, it's public knowledge anyway.
And I think we're doing the
Yeah, they're
first
gonna call
one.
her name anyway. Why are you folding it?
All right, we all good?
Doing the first one on down as our
Not a
first
secret
choice.
ballot. We've already
Are
done
we
that.
doing,
No specific,
figure it out.
I just did it
You got your
alphabetically.
name on it, Charles?
my name is on it.
And
Is
date,
everyone, let's one at a time. Has everyone turned in their ballots?
with their date, and
Commissioner D.
I didn't put a
Sabatino.
date on it, though.
Charles
an
didn't put
issue.
his date on. He was told.
Hasn't listened to the principal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I probably should
For
have.
your paper from 1
Priscilla,
to
you're
10.
supposed to oversee to make sure he got
Robin, did you?
his date.
Supposed to keep me straight, but she's not doing it.
Robin has the floor.
Okay. Art and Rod, when they're talking.
Okay, you got it.
The person that I have,
Should let Jan.
if he or she wants to apply, and it's my opinion, if he or she thinks that you, in your determination, would have possibly made the cut, then,
I would
Can
ask them
he-
to fill out the candidate
right,
questionnaire.
and then
To see
submit
the
it.
more detailed
Okay,
experience,
yeah,
and
let him go through the whole
then
process.
let you all be aware of it.
Like everybody else.
Let him or she, he or she, yep.
All right, well, let's take a 10-minute break. We're going to take a 10-minute break, and you guys are going to do something with these and tell us?
I
Is
was
that
just
the-
going to simply write them down and then share with
5
you.
minute.
Okay.
Well,
All right,
I had a
let's take
question,
a,
Madam Chair, before we take a break.
5 minute?
I had a question before we take a break.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Smith.
I just wanted to make sure that you kind of clarified this, that the 2 county employees for this interview is not the interview with them, it's with
With us.
us.
It's what we did on Skype. and
Yeah, I want to make
everything.
sure that's clarified. And also, some of the questionnaires that they're talking about, we kind of already kind of know them, and so it don't make any sense to me, some of the
It
stuff.
has to be,
Some of the stuff don't need to
Have to be
be
like everybody else.
background check and that kind of stuff, but if I've asked Mr. Barnott hundreds of questions since I've been a commissioner, so that little questionnaire ain't gonna have no effect on me. I don't think that should be a,
We're not going to create a separate process
we're
for
gonna-
them. They have to
they
go
have to
through
do
the
the whole
exact
We just
same
did.
process.
Just
They got to kind of hustle up, because we're bringing them in at this point.
Well, and
So
we
we
can
need the
work with them.
background
It's all
stuff.
online.
I disagree.
and
Wait, push a button.
It's all online, and we would send them the questionnaire. It's very easy to fill out, takes some time. As you know, you saw the candidate questionnaire responses. The due diligence questionnaire response takes about a minute to respond to. But those are important questions that you want to know about as they're moving further into the process. And I think in order to make a comparative judgment between candidates when you get to the interview, you need to have that base information.
Okay. Do you think you can tally the votes in 5 minutes?
Sure.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
oh, can we narrow it to 4?
the state rep.
Very nasty.
Get you.
No, Stubby never had, he had East County.
Where's the camera?
Okay, good afternoon. We're ready to reconvene and hear the results that I believe have been tabulated.
Madam Chair, before the results are announced, Rodney, if you could go ahead and take each of the individual commissioners' written submissions and hand them over to the clerk, please. Thank you.
Okay. So,
That's not very
Madam
neat.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry, my writing's so poor. The three top vote getters were Alfonso with 5, Robertson with 5, and Ryan with 4. There were 3 additional candidates that each had 2. That was Ellis, Leopold, and Vosberg. And so
Could you repeat that
I don't
slowly,
understand,
please?
yeah, I don't
It's
understand how
on, right in front of us.
it's on the
Yeah, but how are
screen.
you reading it?
Oh, you can't see
I
it?
can't, I mean, I'm having a hard time.
so
I know I-
if,
no,
if
no,
I
no.
could summarize,
We need to vote on
those
3.
Oh my
that have
God.
a majority and not a tie that are in, at this point, are Alfonso, Robertson, and Ryan. The others are all at a tie at
They-
2?
Yes, that would be Ellis, Leopold,
Just vote
and
on those
Vosberg.
Okay.
Let's vote
Then
on,
we're gonna have to vote
on those.
on those. We're gonna
I
have
can't
to
believe
take.
David Ellis didn't.
Okay,
make-
the
Or we
the
could just
three,
raise our
the
hand.
3 top
Let me-
candidate
let me
vote
look through
getters
it.
are,
Hold that up.
sorry, the 3 top vote getters were Alfonso, Robertson, and Ryan.
Okay.
Okay? There are 3 more that each had 2 commissioners that supported them as a candidate. And that is Ellis, Leopold, and Vosberg.
So we should vote.
And so you really got 3 clear candidates to consider. And then if you want to find a 4th out of this group, you would need to make a decision between Ellis, Leopold, and Vosberg.
Just keep those 3.
Mr. Attorney, unless you had a better thought on that.
No. What I'm focusing on right now is that we need to go ahead and announce which commissioners voted for which candidates.
There.
Okay,
Okay?
it's on the sheet here. It's
Right
at the
there on
bottom.
sheet.
Okay.
Do you want me to read through
Can we
the?
nevertheless announce it, please?
Sure.
Please.
Commissioner Ball, the 4 candidates, or applicants, I should say, supported were Alfonso, Ellis, Leopold, and Ryan. Commissioner Benak, it is Alfonso, Leopold, Robertson, and Ryan.
John Horn too much.
DiSabatino, Commissioner DiSabatino is Alfonso, Robertson, Stefopoulos, and Vosberg. Commissioner Johnson is Ryan, candidate Ryan, just one. Commissioner Smith is Ellis and Robertson. Commissioner Trace is Alfonso, Lozier, Miller, and Robertson. Commissioner Whitmore is Alfonso, Robertson, Ryan, and Vosberg.
So we have our top 3.
Do you all want to vote for one more, or put one more in the mix? Or do you want to, stay where we are?
We have 5 in the mix then, correct?
Right, we have 5 at this point. I'm gonna go down the line. Commissioner Smith, what would you like to do? Would you like to vote one more time?
Each vote.
With the,
We've
uh,
narrowed
short-
it down to
Got
3.
Yeah.
Are you in
we
favor
have-
of taking one more vote among the
Yeah.
3?
I think we need to have one more vote
Well, then-
for a 4th.
I'm in favor of, I'm not changing my vote, but
Me neither.
Well,
I
I
mean,
didn't ask that. I just asked if you want to vote one more time to get one more.
for those three for one position, what you're saying.
Semifinalists.
Okay.
Everybody put in their one and hand
Okay.
it in.
Yep. All right, is everyone in agreement with voting one more time?
One more out of those three.
Out of those three,
I would want to vote out of the whole group, because then because then you've got, that's only fair to the people, because now maybe that you've got your other ones out of the way, maybe you want to feel a little different as far as
Okay.
voting on people that didn't make it
Okay.
to two.
That's fine with
Would
me.
now make it
One
to-
more vote of the entire group that did not make it.
the
That's what
entire
was-
group?
That didn't make it, of this
Make the top
10.
three.
You get one more vote of all of them.
By the entire commission is what she's saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, by the entire
One
commission.
out of 7.
But rather than narrowing it only to these three, it's 1 out of 7. These three will be included,
Okay.
but 1 out of the 7 that are remaining, that aren't in the top 3, one more vote.
So don't vote for Alfonso, Robertson, or Ryan, because they already got in.
Correct.
And we only get to vote for one person,
One
right?
person. Yep.
Let me just see.
Trying to make sure.
I'm just trying
All
to,
right, is it all clear? Okay, where'd my pad of paper go? No, I'm stealing yours. Where'd it go?
Here's my paper.
That's. Ay, ay,
Put your
ay.
name on.
2:50, 8 p.m.
What is the date today?
Sorry.
Carol, honestly.
I forgot, so that's why I was asking you. 56.
Madam Chair, if I may summarize, once again, for my benefit as well, please indulge me. We are all in agreement that Alfonso, Robertson, and Ryan are in the mix.
Yeah. we said that. We all
We're
voted.
now having a separate vote as to Ellis, Leopold, and Vosberg, with each commissioner limited to voting for one of those three, correct?
Oh, no,
Not
no, there's
necessarily.
another one.
They didn't make the four.
Any of the 7 that
Didn't make the cut.
Okay,
I voted for
all
those
right,
that got in.
okay.
It's not like,
So in a sense, we're backtracking. Fair enough.
flashlight.
One of three wasn't,
Commissioner Johnson asked if he could vote, because he only voted for one, now he wants to vote for another. And I figured,
let's see.
okay, why not? And everybody's on the same playing field. We're not, we've got the top 3, and now everybody that's left is in one more shot.
Q.
If there are rules to this, somebody needs to tell me.
No, you're doing good.
Nobody has told me if there's any rules. We are definitely making them up as we
Should
go
have been at the
along.
part
Wait a
when we
minute,
got Carlos, who wasn't even on it.
Well, I'm gonna change it then.
Yeah, I know, I'm having a hard time too, figuring out what I want to do. I know who my. Ay,
Okay,
ay,
so
ay.
we ready?
I changed it.
I can't decide.
Flip
Yeah,
a
right.
coin.
I know, I'm done. What date's it again?
Now we're going to end up with 7
Wait,
guys.
I may have screwed that up. Wait, what were the 3? I'm sorry.
You could, any of them that didn't make the top 3.
No, which 3
Oh, the
made the
3
top? I
are
wrote it down.
David Alfonso,
Robertson and Ryan.
Alice Robinson, and
now I have
Mark
mine back.
Ryan. She wants to change her vote.
Now we're going to
sorry.
have
No,
7.
no.
Now we're going to have 1 vote for 7 people.
It's entirely possible.
Okay, so she's already on there.
So the question is, will they get a majority, which would be 4,
that's the question,
right? Person has to get a majority.
majority. Nice.
Okay.
We don't have
And then we'll narrow it down and keep going.
Now the pot thickens again. If you don't get a majority.
We got 5.
I would bet we're gonna have this. I'm being
I went
optimistic.
back to my original.
Me too.
All right, we're gonna take another 5-minute break.
No, he'll have it.
This'll be
Really?
quick, yeah.
Okay, we will not take a 5-minute break, sorry about that.
We go back to hippos?
We need a lighthearted day.
Oh, that won't be tomorrow.
Trust me, it won't be tomorrow.
No, that's what I said. Eat all you want now. Bring a pillow. Carol in the paper.
Got any of those Xanax? We might need them tomorrow.
Who? Yes, why don't we bring them?
I hope you play music on TV
Probably
at
won't
this
need it.
point.
Dun, 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 dun.
Please.
Sorry, everybody out there.
And we know, we're just kidding around. We know how important a decision this is. It's just, it's a little bit stressful.
Since 9, so we're a little slack.
Madam Chair, the top three didn't get a majority, so how do we need a majority
I
now?
don't know. Let's see what the
They
vote
got
is.
4 and 4. Yeah, they
They had
did.
4.
Yeah, they each had 4.
Yeah, 4.
Five,
You said four?
Positive.
5 and
One had-
4,
Yeah,
Yes,
one
they
had
did.
5.
yeah, so it was a majority.
Each of the top three had at least 4
Priscilla.
votes.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, please.
They want me to.
Well, whoever
I
drew
offered
that
him-
thing was
I
like,
offered him a cracker that usually calms him down, but it didn't work.
I got pretzels.
Oh, you want a
I
cracker?
got some crackers with peanut butter.
I tried, but
Need 'em.
Oh, my God.
Hey, don't be sick tomorrow.
I was gonna say, there goes tomato.
Rodney, Rodney, all of the information was online. People could access this, right? I mean, it was since when? When we got it, was it all online?
Yes.
Okay. And all the information about each candidate, so people could have, I only received one email regarding this.
It was attached to the board agenda material, so if you were looking at the board agenda,
Okay.
the candidate, this notebook
Yeah.
was available publicly through the agenda.
As of last week, and what day's today,
I
Tuesday?
don't remember the exact date it was posted, but it was
Okay.
sometime last week.
Okay, good, okay.
We
Well,
bring it on ourselves, I can only tell you.
Okay.
made one of the two people who spoke happy, their finalists made it in.
We have, can the camera zoom back down?
if it wants to.
For the overhead.
Okay, if you look at the,
Yay!
that what's marked in yellow, we have 4 commissioners that have voted for Ellis.
Yes.
1 for Lozier, 1 for Leopold, and 1 for Vosberg, for a total of 7. And those commissioners are Ball for Ellis, Benak, Ellis, DiSabatino, Ellis, Johnson, Leopold, Smith, Ellis, Trace, Lozier, and Commissioner Whitmore, Vosberg. So the candidate that received the most votes was Ellis, received 4 out of that vote, Lozier 1, Todd Leopold 1, and Vosberg 1. So Ellis appears to be the top candidate in that particular round.
So I chose all the top.
Well, that's a majority, so we're good to go.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, questions? Commissioner Smith?
Yes, Madam Chair, since we have 6, and we have maybe 1 or 2 decide not to be interviewed, do we have an alternate, or we just leave it as the 6, or 2 or 3 say I already got a job? I mean, how do we deal with that?
There are a couple of candidates Commissioner Smith, that are currently in other candidate processes, and so they may withdraw, they may take another job, although all of them have expressed interest in this particular job. There may be, for whatever reason, they may withdraw at some point in time, so I would suggest that you move forward with the 6, and I'm not sure that answered your
But,
question.
yeah, if you come back all of a sudden, you find out you only got 3 candidates. What do we do? 2 we're counting, and 1 that's still in the running. What do we do at that point if you find that out? I just want to know now
I mean, we
publicly.
move forward with the interviews, and I do have what I'd like to share with you is just a prototype based on input that I heard very early on in the process, and a couple of suggestions that Rod had said what has been past practice with transparent interview processes conducted here at Manatee County. I tried to put together just a suggestion, and it's draft only. It's however you would like to conduct the interview, but for Thursday, September 21st, and Friday, September 22nd, if I could distribute this, and we did make extra copies for everybody in the audience, and I'll put one on the camera as well. But Madam Chair, would you like to talk about that? And-
Yeah, sure.
I have
We
a
need to-
question, Madam Chair, before he
Go
put that up there. Is all our calendars clear for the dates he
We're
has
already on
on
the
there?
calendar.
Are all the candidates available for the,
All the candidates, I talked to all of them, and they were all clear or would make it clear on their calendar to make it Manatee County.
Including the commission?
Yeah, it's on our calendar.
Yeah, I'm just making, yeah, okay.
It's on your
Yes,
calendar.
and I do kind of want to follow up with what Charles asked, because if a couple of these drop out, and I know I had one person that I had voted for that's not made the top 6, is it possible to get them back in, or are we,
We need to narrow it.
Be up to the collective body, I think, to decide.
okay.
We should make that decision today.
No,
We're trying to
Let's
narrow
wait
it
and see.
down, not add.
narrow it down,
No,
not
I'm
add.
saying if he has a,
Back out, then that's better for us. We have less to interview.
We'll have to come back, Charles, and take a vote anyway,
In a
so
public-
let's wait and see.
One thing, we should have a number. If one drops out, I don't think we should do anything. If
two, know what I'm saying, if two
two
drop out
or
of
maybe
three,
three, I don't know what the number is, then maybe
we,
we revisit.
That's probably good.
Commissioner Ball?
Yeah, the thing of it is, we have 6 candidates. So if 2 should drop out, you still have 4.
I'm not saying
So,
two is the number.
I
I just
don't-
think we should have a number in mind.
I don't think we need to do anything. Let's take what we have. If we see a need down the road, we can change it and maybe even go back out in the process.
Madam Clerk, did you receive the second round of written ballots?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Rodney, you had a thought there? Just want to hear you.
I was going to suggest that if you have more than 2 that drop out, the board might want to reconvene and decide how to move forward.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would agree if we have 2 or more
If
drop
two
out.
drop.
2 or more drop out, then we need to go back to the table and see if we want to bring some more in for the next phase of the process.
So,
So we're done.
just Madam Chair, if I could
Please.
just do a quick description. This was assuming 4 finalists, so we'd need to kind of tweak assuming all 6 remain in contention, we'd need to tweak the timing a little bit. And, but we would start with a structured tour. It's very important, in my opinion, that you have and I put the purpose there, to provide some knowledge to the candidates that aren't familiar with Manatee. Some of your candidates are familiar, obviously, but provide the knowledge and perspective for candidates before they actually interview, with actually seeing a tour of the facilities. I know in the past, John Osborne and Sherry Correa,
Poirier.
I'm sorry, Correa, have done tours like that for interviews, according to Rod. And so that, I've just put that down as someone that could help lead them around to see the county facilities and some of the key areas and redevelopment areas and projects and those kinds of important assets in the community. It's also a great place to market your community to the candidates and really sell the community by showing them all the areas of the county. We would then have, and I'm just proposing this, we can restructure it how you like, more of an informal reception with county officials that evening. This would be just a sit-down where you'd have a commissioner maybe at each table, so 7 tables, and you'd have the candidates that would kind of move maybe at certain periods of time and move from table to table after period, just to get a chance to talk informally with both maybe department heads and county commissioners, and have some informal dialogue to get to know them a little bit, answer some questions, get to know about the individuals that are looking at this position. And then the next morning, we would start bright and early with an assessment panel from the department directors. I know a lot of clients really think it's important not because they have a say in who's hired, but just to give an opportunity to the department directors to interact with a potential future boss and have some informal or it would not be a formal interview, a structured interview, but more of an informal session for the department directors to ask questions about the candidates and their backgrounds and experience, et cetera. And especially for the candidates to quiz the department directors about their background and projects and priorities they're working on. And it gives the candidates a much better perspective and knowledge base when they come in to meet with you all on a formal interview scale. You'll notice at 12 noon, and we can extend that if you think it needs to be extended longer, but I've set aside an hour from 12 to 1 for a public Q&A, and we would advertise this, however you like. Or if you don't want to have it, that's fine too, because they're all public meetings. Somebody wants to come and sit in, they can do that from a public perspective as a meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. But it would be an opportunity for them to give kind of their pitch, 3 to 4 minute pitch as a candidate about their background, and then to have each of the candidates, and then to have a moderated, not a free-for-all, a moderated Q&A with the public at in a sit-down area where candidates could be asked questions by the public, and a dialogue could be had for 45 minutes until 1 o'clock. And then in the afternoon, obviously I had started the Board of County Commissioners in the morning, kind of behind the department directors, so that every candidate gets a chance to kind of meet and greet and the department directors before they have an opportunity to interview with the Board of County Commissioners. And then so the morning and afternoon would consist of the final formal interviews with the candidates. And obviously we would have to restructure it to accommodate 6. And then have you see it's scheduled at the bottom, a Board of County Commission review of candidates. But that's where you would also hear input from any interested groups or citizens that wanted to provide some final input into the process based on what they had heard through their public process or public interaction with the candidates. And you all would make a decision whether, there was consensus on a particular candidate to move forward in some steps, or to decide to have wait and think about all the information that you've been presented with, and have a further discussion at a further scheduled meeting before you make a final decision. And so this was just a template. I've used a similar template like this with many other clients, and some of them don't choose to have the public component. You all, several had indicated the desire to do that, and so I've tried to build that into this. So just a suggestion, and I'll answer questions, and we can tweak this however the board would like.
Okay.
And Rod, you may have something to add. Did we include everything that you had suggested to me?
Obviously, there's logistics involved with this. We have some spaces already reserved, just depending on what direction the board wants to go. We have facilities reserved out at the Powell Crowsley or the convention center, depending on how much space we need. So we've got that reserved just to accommodate whatever process you want to go through.
Okay. Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, I have several questions. Number one, the tour, I think that's a great idea to show Manatee County. But what I'm not so sure about are the tour guides that you selected. I'm curious as to where that came from. John Osborne and Sherry Courier, who are both great, don't get me wrong, that's not why I'm asking. But where did that come from?
I actually rode with those two, if my memory is correct, when I assisted the county last year on a recruitment. And I listened to their detailed summaries on the development projects, on some of the challenging redevelopment or the neighborhoods where there's been a focus on code compliance, on some of the traffic and road project challenges that lay in the future, and some of the new developments and the port and all the other assets in the community. And I heard their description of it, and I thought it was outstanding. And so I just simply
Well, they are great. I just, my
thought it was a
concern.
good summary.
Yeah, my concern is, I think they're awesome people, no doubt. But I can't help but feel that Nick Azera should truly be the one to take them on the tour. And I say that only from the standpoint, it's a difficult situation right now going on with making this change. And I really think that Nick would probably be better to take the tour. But anyway, moving forward, I don't know what the other board members would think about that. I'm not sure where it says informal reception with county officials. BOCC and leadership team, key staff, is that not the directors? Wouldn't that not, who?
It was
who
just
is-
an all-encompassing term I tried to use, not to leave anybody out. If you wanted to bring the attorney, county counselor, county attorney, as a part of that, he's not really a department director. He's appointed.
No, but I would look at the directors and the county attorney's office, both, as being leadership team and key staff. I mean, that kind of encompasses it. That's why I'm
I
asking that
just tried to
question.
make it as all-encompassing as you would like, and we can define it as detailed as you'd like.
And I'm assuming at this reception, the candidates would be free to walk around and talk to the different people that are there from the county, et cetera. It wouldn't be a real formal situation. Am I correct on that?
I think, depending on how you want to structure that, there would be some caveats with that. Obviously, we'd want to make sure that if there were any sunshine law implications there, we'd want to make sure that we're paying attention to that.
The only sunshine laws would be the board.
Well, if we're there, there's sunshine.
Yeah, the board.
That's correct.
Would
There
be
will
the
need to
sunshine.
There will need, in order to
Yeah.
comply with the sunshine law at this informal reception that's being proposed, there will need to be some structure to it, some considerable structure, in order to comply with the sunshine law.
Well, Mr. County Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but this board goes to a lot of functions, and we're in the same room together, and we know, as this board the commissioners know, that we can all be in the same room. We all just can't be involved in the same conversation at the same time.
Right.
So,
The
it's.
main distinction between the Kiwanis meeting or the Tiger Bay meeting is that you're not typically discussing county business per se.
But Mr.
Here-
County
here-
Attorney.
Here you're talking county
again,
business.
We can be in the same room and not all of us stand together having a conversation.
And hence
We
my.
know not to do that.
And hence my remark, commissioners, that it needed to be quite structured.
Well, I disagree
Same
with
room,
that. but
yes. Does it
anyway.
need to be structured? Absolutely.
Well, what do you mean by structured?
Well, commissioners stationed at different areas and not communicating with one another. That's
Well,
exactly what I'm
definitely not
describing.
communicating with one another, and we know that.
That's what I'm describing.
Okay.
So the way that I
This is
did,
my job as your attorney, and I will give consistent advice in this regard.
We
way that I
do that all
described
the
the
time.
7 tables, would that
Yeah.
suffice, having 7 different groups to?
We can talk about details,
okay.
but commissioners need to be,
But I-
need to be stationed at 7 different locations, presumably
me.
each at a table, but we can talk about details.
What I don't want to see is this taken away from this board.
It's not.
I still have the floor. Can I finish?
On that subject, since we seem to have some very different opinions, I'm going to tell you
Don't have
when,
the floor.
well, you're going to get it back. I'm going to tell you when we did it the first time, when Hunziker was hired.
Yeah.
I was on the
That's what
chamber
I don't
board.
want.
We went to a reception. All of the candidates just mingled with the different people that were there. I don't remember exactly who was there. I don't remember, honestly, I don't remember county commissioners being there, but I do know, like, the chamber folks were there. That's why I was there. I mean, it was this is something very different, if I understand. Even though it says informal reception, now I'm hearing that we're gonna be 7 tables, county commissioners sitting, it's like, gonna be like speed dating. They're gonna go
Yeah,
from one
this is
table to the
not-
next. Is that what we're talking about?
Just an informal discussion, a Q&A, a meet and greet session was what I was thinking, but I mean,
Well, the other thing that I want to bring up is that I can tell you that all the commissioners have been to the Crosley at functions for this county and have not had to sit at individual tables. We all mingled together. We know what we can do and what we can't. And that has been permitted in the past. That's why I'm bringing it up. But getting back to this, just to try and move forward, I'm not sure who the BOCC and leadership team and key staff are. That's my question.
it's up to you.
Who is that?
I was just generically saying, your leadership team.
Right.
And
Well-
you all define who that is.
The reason I'm asking is because it looks like then on the next morning, you have the county department director's assessment panel. What is where did we come up with an assessment panel? I don't think we approved that. What is that?
It's the group.
It's just what I've used as templates in the past. We can change the wording to however you like.
Well, I'm just saying, I think that, the directors, I think, should be able to individually communicate with each candidate without having a panel. I don't think that we should have, maybe I'm wrong in this term.
It's just the logistics of having that many people sit down with so many candidates. It's much more efficient to have a panel where you can have some
Well,
Q&A together.
I don't think that this board, with what we discussed earlier, when we were going through this process, we didn't want a quote-unquote panel. We want to give any director the opportunity that wants to come and talk to the candidates to be able to have that opportunity. And, to be honest with you, and maybe this goes back, that's why I was asking about the leadership team and key staff, because it's not just directors either. We have a lot of key staff, Karen Stewart, for example, who should be involved in this. So that's why I'm saying I'm not sure about this county department director assessment panel. And the one thing that we did not want to do with this process, and Rodney, I know that we've all talked about this, is we don't want to do it in any way, shape, or form the way it was done before. We don't want a panel giving us their opinions. We want the public to be able to come, the business community, and all the directors and key staff to have an opportunity to communicate. So I'm not real happy with the way it's done at this point. I see too much of what we're trying to change involved in this process, and that scares me. Because if that's the case, why don't we just stay where we are? And I'm not willing to do that.
Okay.
We had talked about this earlier. I understand you say you got this from doing it before. Okay, well, Art, I appreciate it, really. But for this commissioner, I don't want to give the public just an hour, as we have at 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I don't want to do it that way. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I think that all the directors, all key staff, commissioners, we all need to be able to be there. This is not a panel, and you're talking about a panel. Well, who puts that panel together? Where does it come from? Where are the members of this panel? Who are they?
Your department
Would we-
directors is what I suggested.
Right, but,
It's
I
whatever
mean-
you decide as a body.
From
We're
the
going to hear
pa-
from each commissioner.
Yeah, and,
let's hear.
I just think we need to leave it open to all, is what I'm trying to say. Not the directors pick a panel of who they want to interview for this position. That's not what I want to see.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Okay, this process is going to go with all commissioners, not one.
I
And
said
I don't
that.
agree with what Commissioner Boss said about Nick being the person. He's a public outreach officer. Sherry and John
Qualified.
are very qualified. Sherry's been with us for 30-something years. John Osborne has been here for many years. I have no problems with our professionals here and them showing around a candidate. So to even, pick apart that, I just don't understand it. Nick's great. Nick can also talk to him too, but this is totally out of his realm as far as in my opinion. The informal reception, we all do know the rules, Mickey. And I agree, there's going to be a lot of people, 6, that are going to be roaming around that room, and we got to make sure we're not all standing together. We don't have to do tables, but we have to not all stand in a group and discuss. There will be press there, and if we do it and there's a sunshine shame on us, and we should get in trouble for it.
There you go.
And we all know the rules, and that's not going to happen. But Mickey, as our attorney, has to tell us that. So I appreciate that. But if one or more candidates come and join us all at once, we cannot talk about this process of them running for county administrator. To say how we did in the past, you weren't here, and neither was I, but I did go to the public meeting as a mayor of a city. And it was very professional. The public does have a right to have an input. I agree with Vanessa, longer than an hour. I don't know why we don't have a night where the public and the chamber and all the people that some here don't even agree the chamber should get involved. But I think that the chamber and the public should be invited to go to the Crosley for a few hours to meet all the candidates. And we don't have to be there for that. You know, so, you know, these are ideas. We don't have to tear them apart for their ideas. We're going to set the policy or the process on how we want to do this. But and I think you just misworded it, and maybe that's what gets some. You said the county department director assessment panel. I think you just meant the county department heads or directors meet with the applicants. And there's no sunshine violations. All of them are separately, however you want to do it. We don't care about that. And no commissioner should be involved with that meeting because they know a new county administrator is coming. So they know one of those people is going to be their bosses, and they have every right to talk to them without us around. We don't need to be involved with that because we are picking their boss. And then they have a right to see who they can work with. But again, Sherry and John, no, they have input. To say that we are the person up here, I'm sorry, I'm not into this arrogant thing, and I'm not saying you are, but I'm not going to give that impression. I'm not giving the impression by the public that they can't be involved with this. And our directors that keep this county going, that make you all look good and me look good, they have every right to meet who we're selecting. So Sherry and John, I hope the majority of the commissioners allow them to give whoever the candidates are this tour.
Commissioner Smith?
Madam Chair, I totally agree with Commissioner Barr.
Oh, yeah.
As I look at this here, and you mentioned the chamber, I love the chamber, but now we picking winners and losers. You're not mentioning anybody in the community that can attend that meeting. The fact is, what I got concerns with, exactly what Commissioner Bob mentioned. A panel to assess the candidates. It's a bad statement to put to people who we are asking to come here and be interviewed for this job. As I read this here, it looks as though these individuals will need approval from the directors. And they will vet the candidate before the Board of County Commission even see them. Furthermore, when you look at the way it's set up, this process, in my opinion, by the time it get to the Board of County Commissioners, will be tainted, where we will start receiving emails and innuendos about what somebody said. The process should start with the Board of County Commission. To the point that Commissioner Bob mentioned, the meeting could be actually advertised at the Crosley, a social event. They talk one-on-one to each commissioner. We don't have to discuss that at all. If we keep this process the way it is today, the Board of County Commissioners not selecting the next county administrator. We don't know who's selecting the next county administrator. I love the directors, and they should be able to talk to the candidates, but these potential candidates should not be in position where they have to adhere and can't disagree with directors when they're trying to come in and accept the job. We don't want the perception that they have to continue to do what we're already doing. And so this is why I supported change. My next point on this here, no disrespect to Sherry Corrier, John Osborne, and I've said publicly, and I will say it again, Sherry Corrier, in my opinion, can do every department head in this building.
Top notch.
However, the county administrator, not knowing to me,
Me either.
has left town for 2 weeks. I can't question him today.
1 week,
1 week.
10 days.
talk facts.
10 days.
Well, he never called me. I'm talking facts. He left town.
Send an
And
email.
we may need to fire him when he gets back.
Oh, God.
You want to talk about
Talk
facts?
about
No,
facts.
you say talk facts. He has
my
never,
God.
I didn't even know he even left town. He never sent an email. He never called me, and he left the country. So some people are privileged to information.
With the employment.
And the deputy county administrator left with him also. So since that happened, I'm making this statement of the facts that the two interim deputy county administrators, who was put in place by the county administrator, now is being asked to go out with the new candidates, which I have the most confidence in them. Don't misunderstand me. But these candidates should be put in a situation, I have no problem with Nick, That's his job with public relations.
That's it.
That's what he was hired for, public relations. If he need assistant staff to work with him, I'm fine with that. The chamber, 88, Minnesota, whoever you want, should not be isolated and singled out where they can get with the county potential candidates. It should be open to anyone. And I don't want to call names. Anyone need to be able to participate. You know, so I want to be sure that this process that we're going through is totally changed, because I would not support this process at all. The Board of County Commission need to be engaged before all this here takes place. So we need to work out how we're going to meet the candidates. It could be advertised, it could be a social event. We don't need to be talking collectively together. But as Commissioner Boss stated, I've been to numerous events where all of us been there.
Yep.
And we did our own thing. We talked to individuals confidentially, individually, and everything else. I don't see why that can't be done now. For us to move forward with this process right here puts us in a situation right now where we would not even get nobody to replace the county administrator, in my opinion. And I am not happy with the process. I can tell you that now, because we're not selecting a new county administrator based on what I see here.
Commissioner DeSabatino.
I know you had good intentions of this timeline, but, and I had no idea any of this was going to go on. I would just think if I were a candidate in a pool with 2 or 3 or 4 other candidates, I'd be uncomfortable going on a van with them all together. I just think that'd be awkward. That's my opinion. I don't know why we just can't get to go through your background check information. You need to narrow it down. The 2 that were added need to get up to speed, and then go through all your background checks. If any of that 6 don't make it through that next phase, then we've narrowed it down. Then we'll know how many. I just think after that, what we did with the county attorney, they just came in for interviews. So we didn't have any big reception, and we didn't have, I mean, they'll come in for interviews. They'll be right there on camera. The public is invited to attend. There'll be public comment. Maybe we can do that on the Thursday and then come back on the Friday to deliberate. I mean, I don't know if we need to go through this whole formal thing. I would think it'd be awkward for everybody to be in the same room with different leaders and shakers. And then you will start getting, I didn't think of it, you will start getting emails from this group or that group, and they have their form letter that they send out to all their people in their group, and they want this one, and, you know. So I just think it could be simpler, in my opinion.
Okay, I'm actually next. It's a big decision for this community, not just this board, for this community, and to say otherwise is wrong. This structured community tour, don't forget, guys, people are watching us. We're trying to attract people to take this job, not chase them away. The structured,
Betsy,
thank you,
tone.
thank you, thank you.
So you know, tone.
A structured community tour, I assume, is an option if people want to learn more, to have a chance. You know, this is a great community. People need to have an opportunity. I assume that was the intent, to put that there, that this is an option if people want, because remember, we set aside 2 days. We're inviting people to come. I hope they will come and take a tour with folks that know this county, love this county, want to sell this county, and want a great county administrator. Whoever that is, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the people that have been appointed. Known both of them for a long time. Nick wants to come, sure. He'd be a great addition as well. The informal reception. I think that should be open to the public. I think it should be an informal reception. Everybody can come. Advertised meeting. We all know how to deal with the sunshine. But let's have a reception, invite everyone to come. Chance to talk with everybody. Don't see a problem there.
Yep.
The county review, definitely not an assessment panel.
Right.
I see that. If you look at the way it's done, 7:45 to 8:45, candidate A meets with the leadership team of this county, the directors. They get a chance to ask questions back and forth. Then they come and meet with us in the interview. I think that's a good thing. I'm trying to put myself in this position. If I'm interviewing for a job with the policy makers, if I have an opportunity to meet ahead of time with the department directors and they're asking questions back and forth, I think that would put me in a better position for the interview. I don't see that as being bad. I see that as being good. I don't see, well, I don't see the big concern, but that's my opinion.
Can I
That
jump in on 1 second?
as far as the lunchtime thing, you know, as long as it's, again, informal over lunch, people that couldn't make it to the reception, fine. Just make sure we have pizza or something to eat. And then our interviews. I mean, we're trying to structure 2 days where these folks are here to interact with the community. We need to do that, and we need to make a decision at the end. You know, what is the outcome of having the county review department? I don't know. Maybe one of the county directors calls me and says, I think this guy's the best guy. I'm okay with that. Maybe that's the outcome of the informal reception. Somebody calls me and said, I think this guy should be our guy. This is the process. I don't see who's making this decision. We are. No doubt, it's on our table to do. But we got to have some input from the community. So those are my thoughts. Commissioner Baugh?
Hot dog. You know, I don't think anybody up here ever said we didn't want the directors involved. I think if you look back at all of the meetings that we've had, I, for one, have been very explicit that I wanted the directors involved. I have been very open about wanting to make sure that the business community and the public has a chance to be involved. What I don't want to see, and, you know, I'm going to go ahead and just open this up to go so that everyone will understand where I'm coming from. And I thought we had made it pretty clear on what our thoughts were in the workshop that we had, but maybe not. All the directors need to be able to go. Said that since day one. Very important. What I don't want to see is an assessment panel put together by people that we don't have a clue as to who it is or how it's done. I think, you know, to be clear, I don't want the current administration, when I say that, I mean the county administrator, involved in this process. I don't want any input from him on this process. And I feel like that, you know, I thought we had talked about having 2 nights at Crosley, one for the directors and key employees of the county, and then the next night was going to be for the public and the business community. I thought that's what we had talked about. So I'm not sure where all this came from because, you know, yeah, we need to have the directors and key staff people have time to spend with all the candidates. And I thought that was one night at the Crosley that we had talked about, and then another night at the Crosley, 2 nights. The next night was going to be business community and, you know, the public. Thought it was very important. Never did I don't recall ever hearing anything about a county department director assessment panel. No. The other thing is, as far as John Osborne and Sherry Courier, you know what, I've heard some comments up here that I don't much appreciate because nobody ever said anything of the sort. In fact, we've all talked about how much we care and how much we think of John Osborne and Sherry Courier and the jobs that they do. However, to, you know, put them in the position to do this tour, they come under the county administrator. They strictly speak for the county administrator. Their jobs today, they're running the county because the county administrator and the deputy county administrator took off and didn't tell 4 commissioners. And they're out of the country. So they're running the county and they're doing a great job. I think they're awesome. I have no doubts and no complaints. But, you know, that's why I mentioned Nick. Nick, yes, he comes under the county administrator, but it's more his job to show off the county and show what wonderful things we have here in the county. That's why I said that, because for me, I think we need to keep administration or the administrator out of this process. And unfortunately, right now, they answer boom, they're there, they're his assistants. And that's not who I think needs to be on this tour. Not taking anything away from them at all, because I can tell you, I'm sure that they'll be very involved in the county when we're in the next step. I think all of us up here want them to be. But I don't want the tour being done basically by the county administrator, and that's where it would be.
Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, this process did not come from the county, it came from me. This is a typical process that we utilize and we tweak for every client we have around the country. I apologize if I've used the wrong terminology by calling it an assessment panel. We simply wanted the opportunity for the department directors to have an opportunity to meet and in an efficient way, and even just as important, the applicants to be able to ask questions and become more knowledgeable about departmental operations and what's going on in an informal way, so that when they are best prepared when they meet with the Board of County Commissioners. Usually with a tour, most of your high-performing, top-flight city and county administrators and managers around the country, they appreciate the effort that communities go to in structuring tours and in providing a hospitable and receptive environment where they can come in and have the opportunity to interact with a lot of different individuals from not only the organization but the community. And we tried to put into the public Q&A session, if you'll notice, the civic and business leaders, the thought being, again, it was just an idea. It was not in any way me trying to dictate to this body how to structure this interaction, but it's something that most communities try to do, is provide an opportunity for whether it's the chamber, economic development group, or whoever it is, invite them all to come in and meet and greet with the candidates. With the tour, one of the things of having a process and going through the regimented the regimented structure of meeting different people in different circumstances, including the potential awkwardness of taking a tour with your competitors, is how do they interact during those stressful times or those awkward times. One of the things that was of the highest priority for you all was having an ability to communicate in all circumstances, and an ability to facilitate and dialogue and converse and have conversation and be transparent about it. And when you're putting people in these different situations, yeah, it may be difficult and awkward. I can tell you the video interviews are extremely awkward for the candidates, because they're sitting and looking at themselves in the video in the computer as they're responding to the questions, and it's very difficult to do. Even the best public presenters and public speakers have a difficult time with it, and that's part of the thought of having a process that is regimented with all kinds of different scenarios where they're meeting and greeting with folks in the community as well as your staff. And before the Board of County Commissioners has an interview, and no local government that I know has ever simply given away the authority to appoint their chief administrative officer, in this case county administrator. It's always the role of this group to make the decision, and so this was in no way an effort to take away. It was just simply to try to get input and transparency and see them in a different environment, or in different environments, and how they perform. Because quite honestly, it's a performance job. You've got to respond to questions from you all on a weekly, if not daily basis, from reporters, from the county attorney, from everyone, and be able to respond spontaneously and with spontaneity and clarity and accuracy and show a leadership presence. And I think one of the things you're looking for is, do they have that leadership presence through this process? So it's just a thought. If you'd like to just have a single interview with just you all, that's doable too, and easier for all of us.
That's not,
But,
I'm next
well, I mean,
on
I've heard a
board.
lot of different ideas, and there's no pride in, there's no ownership or pride in authorship here. This was, and it was not staff-driven. This was driven by me in putting this together based on my experience, many, many years of doing this, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Whitmore?
And thank you, because I think some think that it's driven by the county administrator, so I'm glad you've clarified that. I'm not going to let this process go down the toilet like it's acting right now. I'm sorry that maybe you were spoken to the way that you did. We didn't agree with the wordage, and as you know that, and then we'll just change it. I have no problem from what Betsy said. I still think, is everybody done laughing over there? Can I continue? You're interrupting, I'm trying to talk.
Just talk one person at a time.
No,
One person
Vanessa?
at a time. Carol?
Quit.
We're
You got the
getting,
floor.
if you must know.
I don't
You got
care.
the floor.
Off the wall.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Oh, our little
Might be the mother,
friend.
might be the
That's my
mother of the
friend.
baby that was here last week.
That we just clarified. That's probably true.
Don't hurt him.
I'm going to wait.
Go ahead,
Should I
Carol.
wait? Okay. I apologize, but if you could change, I think, the process. I still think John and Sherry are fine if we're going to do a tour. I don't even really see why we need to do a tour. I've never heard of that before. I know you've had it done at other places. I think you're hearing from this board that maybe they, maybe if you got down to the final three, but we've got 7.
Yeah, I think it's.
So if you got down to the final 3, maybe do the tour.
It's 6.
And they're not gonna know.
Oh, because we're going to pick the
locations.
top one out of the 6. We're not going to narrow it
You
down any
may, or
further.
you may narrow it down
Okay.
to 2 or 3 and say, we can't make that decision, we want to narrow it down. But to me, it gives everyone an even playing field.
Yeah, it
If they
is.
know what your city facilities look like, the state of your neighborhoods, the
Well, all they have
streets
to
and
do
all.
is watch these meetings, and they may not come. They may go down to Sarasota, the good ones. So we need to brush up our professionalism up here. You're hearing, and you haven't heard from Steve, you haven't heard from Priscilla, you've heard from all of us that like to throw in our input, but this is an entire board decision. I have no problems with Sherry Corey and John Osborne if we decide to do something to show whoever the finalists are to see our community. If that doesn't happen, I don't care. This is up to the entire board, not 1 or 2, okay? The informal reception should be with the public. So if you figure that out, I think it should be open to the public and the chamber, whoever wants to come. And yes, that's what they did when they hired the last administrator, because I came as an elected official somewhere else. I think, like Betsy said, that the county directors need to meet whoever the candidates are. I have no problems with that. We're making the final decision. They aren't, but they have every right to see who is applying for the job. Doesn't mean it's going to influence me. It doesn't mean it's going to influence a lot of us. But they have every right to see who's applied for the job and if they have concerns. So let's move forward. Let's get a little bit more professionalism with this. And Art, you're the messenger. You got killed. Sorry. And maybe let's just try to come up with a plan and let's move forward. No laughing,
Rodney, you want to
please. I'm
respond,
sick
and
of it.
Commissioner Trace?
Yeah, I think in terms of helping us move forward, I think what would help us is more about, who do you want input from, or if you want input. And once we know those sort of parameters, we can put together a program that allows that to happen. So if you want public input, if you want meet and greets, if you want certain individuals involved, whatever, just give us that sort of guideline and we'll put a program together and bring that back to you. We're trying to work within a 2-day sort of program. So in terms of getting people here, structuring the arrival and departure of people and so forth, working out the logistics of where we're going to do this and so forth, we can come back to you with the details of how that might work, so long as we know what those parameters are. I think what we were putting in front of you today was to provoke some conversation as to what do you want to see happen and who do you want input from. Once we know that, then we can structure that so that you get the input that you need and you meet the people who you need to meet. And as Art was implying, we're trying to give you a way to see candidates in an informal setting outside of the structured interview process, because we all know people are different in those different settings. So we're trying to give you different views of the candidates so you have as much information about making the right choice as possible. So we're just needing some guidelines on, if you want input, who do you want input from? Do you want to have public receptions or private receptions or what have you? Once we know those details, we can put a program together, work through the logistics, and come back and present that to you for further refinement or modifications.
Okay, Commissioner Trace?
Well, I've been sitting here, it's very interesting. I personally think the tour guide is good, if I'm remembering correctly. I think of the 6 we have, of course, 2 know the area very well, but I think of the other 4, I think only 2 have Florida, at least on their, I don't know, in their background at all. So they may have no idea what they're getting into. So I think the tour is a good idea. Who we get, I have no problem, John or Sherry. If we think we need somebody that's a non-administrative person, which I have no problem, let's get someone that's been here a while. Ed Childs, one of the Bells. We have people that know this area extremely well that I'm sure we can find through the chamber. I can get all kind of good old boys from the ag business if we wanted to go that route. That might not be the best idea.
Yeah, our guy from Connecticut.
The informal reception, I think everybody should be there, chamber, the businessmen. And I say, if we're playing on Friday, these guys are moving around, let's play, find a candidate. Let's have it 3 people. They're meeting the directors, which we all have agreed. We do not want the assessment panel. We want the directors, all of them. And then let's also have a spot for any public that wants to come in. Give the public 20 minutes, one candidate at a time. So basically, these candidates are going to go from speed dating, I think we called it, however you want to look at it. So you're going to have assessment from the director, the public, and us, whoever wants to come. That's all I have to say about this, except that I think the more input we get from people, the better we have it. That's the way I look at it. It seems to me that's the best way to open it. They can be there Friday night, the public. They can come on Friday, meet the candidate, and I say we vote on that. Let's move on about our business.
Amen.
Okay, Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you look at the whole concept of assessment, we all assess votes up here. Do we have a majority? County administrator assess votes. As I told one of the department heads, that if the county administrator would assess that he wanted 1 more year, he probably would have got 1 more year, but he mentioned 3. So my position as a commissioner, I have to assess what information is given to me. And I have stated this. I have no disagreement with what Commissioner Barr said or Commissioner Trace. I just want the process not to be closed in to a select few or a select few organizations. I think we go down slippery slopes. And history repeats itself. No matter what we think about the process that happened last time, it was an uproar on that process. And I don't want to fall into that trap again, whether it was right or wrong. That's the only reason I'm saying what I'm saying now. So when we keep talking about some person, one person, Ed Childs, I love Ed Childs, but I don't want to get down to that slippery slope.
They'll be building a restaurant.
It needs to be to the point where when these individuals are going on a tour, they feel the freedom to ask whomever guiding them personal questions. No disrespect to Sherry or John Osborne. We need this person with the freedom to articulate to these individuals when they say, what I'm getting into, what should I look out for? That's the question when you're traveling. You're seeing different locations. I think Nick can handle that. I've seen him at FACT. I've seen him working. I've seen him with other commissioners. I've seen him deal with other staff, and I think he will do that. They would do it also, but in the end of the day, you're going to have a segment that comes down here to these meetings saying that it was something wrong with the process, because actually you have the administration leading these individuals where they may not feel comfortable asking certain questions. It may be a point question asked about the county administrator that they may not want to answer. That's the only thing I'm saying. There's no disrespect to any one of them. They're fine people, and I know they can do the job, and they're seasoned. But Nick is used to getting bad news quicker than all of us and passing it on to us and answering that phone and doing press releases. So I have the utmost confidence, and he can bring someone else with him. I'm just saying, we want this to flow. And to the point of Crosley, Madam Chair, she said it right, I agree. It should be the Crosley, it should be 2 nights, or whatever we do it, where the public can come. It need to be open to anyone. We don't need to specifically say this organization is open to any business organization, any nonprofit, any environmental organization. It's to any one of these certain nights. That's the only thing I'm saying from that standpoint. And I'm on record that I support the department heads. I don't believe anyone should come in here and push them out the door. But at the same time, I feel uncomfortable if we have department heads asking them, are you going to fire everybody? That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And then we get a leak when it wasn't really said, but now we're tainted already of the fact that the interview process, now we got people saying, oh, this is what was said, and this how it was said, and this is what this individual said they were going to do. I don't want to get into that trap. That's why I'm concerned with that process. Certainly, we can advertise these meetings publicly. The media will show up, and individually, as we mingling around, they have the opportunity to talk to us. And then certainly, we're going to end up coming back to a public forum to make a decision. That's transparent to me. So I just want to set everything straight in my opinion, so we be on one accord. And we may not agree to hire anyone. As Commissioner Johnson mentioned, I got some issues. I'm not saying I'm going to support anybody. So I just want to clear the air on that, so I don't want anybody leaving with bad feelings at all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Johnson.
Well, first of all, Art, apologize that this thing is, I have no idea where we're going, man. We got 7 of us with 7 different ideas, so, I've been quiet, so I'll throw my ideas out and let you know what I think. And, I think obviously they got to be given a tour of the community. I think that's critical. Some of the candidates aren't even residents of Florida, so, what better way to show it off as far as whether you want to show them around or whoever, wants to show them around. I don't have a problem with that. It's just, I think that's a good thing to do for these candidates. Secondly, from my standpoint, you've got me booked here to see 4 candidates, each an hour and 15 minutes. Quite frankly, after I've seen them each for an hour and 15 minutes, I probably don't need to go have cocktails with them at the Crosley. I think that's the job for you all to get the public involved at that point. And I think that's critical that we see if we can get the chamber or whoever you want to talk about, from the public, to meet them. And hopefully will give us up here some feedback as to what they see. But as far as me going down to there and spending, a couple hours with them, I don't need that. I want them to meet leaders in town, the civic leaders and people like that. That's more critical to see if they think they're a good fit. And, and obviously I think they need to meet the department heads. They're going to be working with them. They're going to, this guy's or gal's going to be their boss. So they ought to, have some initial reaction one way or the other. And quite frankly, I'd like to think the department heads would give me some feedback as a commissioner saying, hey, I like this person, or I hate this person. I don't, ultimately we're going to make the decision up here. And, so, that's where I stand. How you execute something like that, given all of our different opinions up here, I'm at a loss to be able to, but, that's kind of what I'm, Those are my thoughts on it at this point.
I'm going to give it a shot at the end. Commissioner Sabatino?
The only thing that I'm seeing here, or what I'm not seeing here, are one-on-one, the commissioner, like,
I don't want one.
the, when we have our briefings. One-on-one for each one of us for, 20 minutes or so we can meet them one-on-one.
No, isn't that
That's
right
in
down at
our
the bottom?
interviews.
That's
We're
the
all
hour and
together.
15 minutes you're
But
gonna
we're all
get one.
together,
Yeah,
not
but so what?
one-on-one.
No, we're one-on-one there.
Are we not one-on-one there?
No, we're all
All
together. Why
together?
would we?
It's all together.
Oh, no.
So we don't have any one-on-one.
Hired Mickey, we were all, well, you all.
Claire,
said
let's
you
not
wanted
all
to.
talk at once.
So what
please.
I'm saying
Have a
is,
question, push your button.
I think it would be
Not me.
helpful to have one-on-one interviews in our offices, like we do at speed dating, what we do with the county administrator and attorney. You have your briefing, have like a 15 to 20 minute, half hour, whatever, and they all just cycle through, and maybe if it's down to 2 or 3, that's easier to do, because you're gonna first go through the background and everything else, so it might kick out a few of those, so I'm not saying it will or it won't, but I think would be helpful is for me to meet them one-on-one. I don't need to meet them at the Crosley or this and that. I think that's the community thing. I'm just looking to see how we interact one-on-one, and then at the end have a group thing. They can meet all together in the morning, each one of them with the different department heads like we did. They brought us each in, and they spoke with us all. Might be a little awkward because one department head is also applying, so he can't sit in on the other interviews, so.
2 of them.
Yeah.
No.
Well, one's not a department head, right? So I just think, I'm just looking, I would like a one-on-one and then a group, and the rest of it, it's all up to you. I don't care.
Okay. Commissioner Baugh?
I think what I'm hearing from the board is really kind of what I was saying all along. The directors as a whole, all the directors need to be involved in meeting all the candidates. Other key leadership in this county needs to be able to also be involved in that process. So I'm looking at, what you put on your list from 5:30 to 7:30. I mean, I think it should be not so much the BOCC as it is all the directors and key leadership in the county. My thought was, and what I thought again that we were going to do, was Friday evening, or are you looking, Art, at having them leave Friday evening going home? Is that what you're doing? Okay. Then it, might be obviously then that evening, the public, business community, chamber, whomever, all needs to go and meet. Friday during the day, I am with Commissioner DeSabatino. I thought that when I looked at the bottom that somehow or the other, every commissioner would be able to meet with each candidate individually. I would rather meet with each candidate individually. So, I guess, and what I'm saying is, what I'm hearing from here is that we're probably going to need to change this somehow.
Definitely.
I don't know why, Art, you might think that, but
Put it in
anyway.
the shredder.
We definitely, I think the board, the BOCC needs individual times with each candidate. Because I know I'd probably ask different questions than Commissioner Whitmore.
Totally.
So professional. But anyway, so I do think, that the evening at the Crosley needs to be all of the directors, the BOCC if they want to attend, and the business community, or the public, whichever, whomever wants to go. But yeah, and then on Friday, by the way, it might be when someone is not meeting with a commissioner, then they might be able to meet, with all the directors.
Right, just tag team.
We could have something up on the fourth floor, have some refreshments in there, and when a prospect is not with a commissioner, they can be up on the fourth floor talking with staff. So I think it's workable to switch it around a little bit.
Question, I'm hearing some desire to have individual interviews, but are we saying you don't want to have a collective interview?
No, we have to have a collective.
We have to have a
Yeah.
collective.
I think that's
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah,
At
but
the
I
end
think
of
we
the
all
day.
want to,
Because you also need to
Afternoon.
ask, and we help come up with questions, you can add your own.
Right.
But just a template of some basic or important and focused questions based on your priorities, as I understand them, so that you can tweak them. But it's important from a comparative analysis of all the candidates to ask a certain set of base questions that are the same. That doesn't mean you can't ask different questions and go deep down with a particular issue with a particular candidate. But it's, from a comparative analysis, it's important to be able to compare candidates, to have similar questions with each candidate. So I'm not sure that you would be able to do that
We could prepare our own
individually.
and have it for the same.
But
for each
collectively,
one.
we need to try to do that. At least that's what all the literature that I've ever come across, you try to do.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here real quick. On the structured community tour, I'm hearing that people want to interview individually. Scratch that, make it so that there's interviews with each one of the commissioners, that speed dating thing, whatever, however, that's going to be a matrix that y'all are going to have to figure out how to do that in that time frame, and then maybe have a place where when they're waiting, they can go and get a tour, a virtual tour from Nick, something like that.
I like that.
Rather than having them bust all around. September's not a great weather time to
Very
be
hot.
running around the county anyway, so maybe that could be an alternative. I just wanted to throw
BBC
that
could have
out.
their little video thing.
Yeah, we can do
going.
videos, that
be
would
at the
have
public
to be
safety
the
building
virtual tour of Manatee County, just a thought.
You better stop taking me off that more.
Can we not do the hour and 15 minutes
Yeah, that's
individual?
too long. That's too long.
Please.
Since you won't let me say
I
it.
think
Oh,
we
you
did
got it?
45 minutes for the,
It's 20
Okay,
minutes.
Vanessa had an idea.
Thank you.
time would you want?
Actually, I've been corresponding with Nick a little bit, and he's brought out a couple of good things. 6 candidates, 20 minutes, with all 7 commissioners, 14 hours.
No,
So
oh,
I don't know that that's going to work.
14 hours.
That's what he's got down here. I haven't figured it out myself. But then the other thing he said that I thought was great,
It's not speed dating, we need speed dating.
yeah, but let me finish, please. And then I won't, The other thing that he says is really, really, really good, I think. Show them Melissa's drone footage.
that's what you just said,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's excellent.
I think there's a math problem here. I think we need to look at the math.
Yeah, make sure that's right. That
Yeah,
seems.
because if we've got 7 commissioners and we have 6,
Minutes.
It doesn't work, Nick. You messed up, buddy.
Priscilla
Seriously.
says, so.
2.5 hours.
All right, Priscilla, you actually have the floor next.
I was
we
just,
nixed the tour.
I think we're all kind of on agreement. Can we maybe go each one of these things and decide how we want to do it, these timeframes, and move on about our business?
Well, I'm gonna do it by consensus
That's what I'm
then.
saying. Let's,
Structured community tour, do we all agree with my suggestion, if we can work out the time?
Yes.
yes.
We're gonna have individual meeting time, and then we're gonna have a virtual place when they're not meeting. Is that doable? I don't know, I'm just an
Yes.
idea.
around the building and take them on a tour.
I think
of
if
the different-
you were meeting individually with each candidate, there are 7 of you, and if we had 6 candidates, 1 board member is getting a break for 20 minutes while the 6 candidates are meeting with 6 individual
Right.
board members. At the end of the 20 minutes, you go to the next board member, and each 20 minutes, 1 board member would have a 20-minute break, but over 6 successive 20-minute periods, you would get through all 6 candidates.
Sounds
Okay.
easy.
Okay.
And so the candidates would be busy for that, what amounts to,
we
what,
have
2
time for the
hours?
video, but they don't.
And each board member would get a break during that 2 hours, because there would be 1 20-minute session where you wouldn't have a candidate. So we could structure it so it's
Right.
sort of a round-robin sort of process, so you get through all of that. And then at the end of that 2 hours, we move them on, give them a break, and then transition to whatever the next activity might be.
Right.
So what is the next activity?
The Crosley, they could take the
No, that
scenic
they
route.
meet with the
Department
directors.
You know,
and
again,
they
I,
have lunch with them.
No, wait, no, you're changing the entire thing. Let's go through this one at a time.
One at a time, I agree.
Again, I think if you say, you know, if you're in favor of some sort of tour, you know, that's a good thing in terms of marketing the county and then giving them an even playing field to see what's going on. We can talk about, you know, once we get this thing structured, we can talk about, well, who's going to do that and how will we do it and what the details of that is. If you're in favor of doing something like that, we'll put that in the program. If you're in favor of a public reception, we'll put that in the program and figure out where and how to do that and the time frame to do it. If you want a collective board interview in the process, we'll do that. If you want individual board meetings, we'll put that in there. If you want input from the public, we'll have to structure in a way that there's a mechanism for them to give you that input. If you want input from directors, if the directors are going to meet with candidates and you want input, then we say input. If you're just simply, we're not wanting your input, we just want to give you the opportunity to meet the candidates, figure out what the structure is for that.
I don't think anybody wants
So I'm
that.
going to go down the line. Commissioner Trace, you were on the board. I'm going, everybody's on the board. You just take yourself off?
Yeah, I thought, or we decided that we're doing individuals, we're still on that. Now,
Okay.
what's the next
All
one?
right.
I
well,
already said.
All right, I'm next, and I want to make sure that I understand. So I'm going to go down here. The structured community tour has been changed to be 140 minutes of individual interviews, if I got that right. 20 minutes times 7, 140 minutes, that's how I came up with that. And then the balance of that, we're going to be roughly the same time frame. So the balance of that is going to be whatever the tour is, virtual or otherwise. Then they're going to show up, and whoever wants to show up, at an informal reception at the Crosley at 5:30 that night, Thursday. Then we're going to keep the schedule that we have on Friday. There's going to be a county department director review. However it's set up, they're going to meet with them, and then they're going to meet with us in our interviews. I don't see the need for a formal process for input. If people want to come and make public comment, that will happen. At the board interview, afternoon date, there'll be public comment. Anybody who's met anybody the night before or in the lunch session, they can show up then and say, you know, I like this person. Or they can pick up the phone and call us. This is not a quasi-judicial process. We can get emails, we can get texts, we can get whatever. If you get a text, make sure you copy it to your county email. So I don't think we need a formal process. So I'm basically agreeing with the process with the slight changes. That's what my proposal would be. Commissioner, and y'all can comment on it, Commissioner Whitmore.
Oh,
Sorry.
worked out perfect.
Sorry. I didn't know you were gone.
I heard every word you said in the back, and that sounds like a plan with me. I'm fine with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Baugh.
Yeah, would you go over again about Friday? You want to have the assessment panel? Is that what I heard you? I missed that part.
I don't know what to call it. It's the county department heads.
Right, that's it.
Will be there, and they will meet candidate A from 7:45 to 8:45. It will be an interchange between the candidate A and the department directors. You know, I assume I don't know how it will work. Will
So
they
they're
get
gonna meet
questions, I
there
guess?
and then come down here to interview us? So
They're going to meet in a room, let's say the fourth
room.
floor. They're going to meet with, the department directors are going to meet candidate A, and they're going to have an interchange of some conversation. Then when candidate A is done with that at 8:45, we start our meeting at 9. We pick up with candidate A in a joint session, public meeting, BOCC interviews
Okay.
at 9 o'clock. So the exact schedule that's here. So then candidate B, 9 to 10 with the department directors, all hanging out in a room, whatever you want to call it. And then that person comes down and meets with us, the board. And that will be after Thursday, you'd had your individual
One-on-ones.
meetings
Right.
with them. But this is a chance for all of us to ask questions. We get an hour and 15 minutes for each candidate. We go all through that. Then it is one question. So the review of candidates, 4:15 to 5, was the intention to make a decision? Or what happens there?
Opportunity to
Add
get
2 more.
input from.
The
any
public.
Final.
Open public comment.
Suggestions, questions, thoughts.
After we wrap it up?
After you finish your final interview, if you wanted to talk about narrowing it down and there was consensus, sometimes it's very clear
Okay.
with commissions that, you know what? Everybody agree on a top 2 candidates, it's pretty easily, without even taking a vote,
Kind of
everybody
where do we go
knows.
from here? We'll know then.
You'd make that decision then.
I have a
All right, well,
question.
then I'm okay. Commissioner Baugh is on the board next.
I am not okay. I'm okay with the directors, all the directors, meeting with the candidates. I am not okay with a panel being selected and only those meeting.
They said
I'm
the
just
wrong-
wanting to make sure
They said the
that
wrong
that's not the way it's done, and that the directors that are in this room
Except for John.
John, you can't do it. But not a panel per se. All the directors,
That was the intent.
yeah,
That was the
okay.
beginning.
As long as that's the case, because that's not what it says.
That's because he didn't know.
You know, so I just wanted to make sure that was changed, because I just don't think it would be fair, to do it any other way for the directors. So,
Vanessa, add the
Okay.
5. We didn't add the 2 on the bottom. If you said we're going to stop at 5, but we have 2 more candidates. This is the old
So
sheet.
we would
before
need to
added
tweak
2.
the times
Okay.
and
The
all that
times,
kind of
right.
stuff.
You can
Okay.
tweak the times to squeeze
Added
those
2
other
more
2 in.
candidates.
Compress the
All right,
time.
assuming that we are
You
still
can
at
shorten
6.
some of the times,
Yeah.
that's
Thank
right.
you.
Okay, assuming
So-
we're still at
I
6.
think 45 minutes is enough.
if I may,
25.
are we going to take public question and answer session now from 12 to 1 and give them lunch?
Yes, that's what I said.
Do they get to eat lunch?
That was a concern with the way it was set up. And
So
so
we
we
could
have
pizza
a
or
break.
something. Pizza and cookies or something.
Can bring in sandwiches.
Exactly. But we need to feed them.
We got crackers right over
You know, say up on
We
the,
need to answer their own emails and things.
Yeah.
yeah, yep, that's a little break there, so, at the noon. Okay.
You still want to do the public interview portion of that then?
Well, they'll have that night, the Crosley, to do that, right? And then they'll
from what
have
the chair
public
said,
comment.
that they would be invited to, the public's invited to sit in on all the interviews, right?
Except the one-on-ones.
And
Not
then
ours, not our
Absolutely.
one-on-one.
Oh,
Director.
but no, the group.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
No,
Everything will
officially.
have to be open to the public.
Totally.
Yes.
And advertised.
Yeah, but will they be able to ask questions?
Public comment.
Have public comment with that, which they can't actually ask them questions, can they?
You mean at the Crosley?
That's probably a question for the county attorney on that one.
Well, I still like the idea of the lunch thing being as you've described it, but maybe just like up on the 4th floor, we just have pizza, everybody goes up there, if they want to, it isn't mandatory that they be there, but this is a time for the public to ask them questions and maybe just pizza and drinks for that break at noon. That's kind of how you designed it, right? Or, I don't know, and you're going to have informational handouts? I don't know. Does that sound reasonable?
The thought was we were gonna do little bios on each candidate on a one-pager, so that those could be distributed to the public that shows.
Good idea.
And obviously, if they wanted to see background and resumes, that's all public information, but it would just be a one-sheeter bio on the top 6 candidates, a paragraph on each one.
All right. Commissioner Smith, you're up next.
Yes, Madam Chair. I think this process is moving forward, and the reason why it needs to be specifically stated in this meeting here, so we be on one accord, and I have mentioned this before, that we don't allow someone to grab the 6 candidates and all of a sudden we see them on TV answering political questions somewhere that we have no control of, or an organization invite them to a board meeting or something like that, or even Tiger Bay. I'm a board member. You see them on the Tiger Bay. I want to make sure that we have the candidates where they're open to the public can be there,
guys.
that they don't get caught into a situation where there's somewhere where the process all of a sudden gets tainted and people asking them political questions, and now we got that going on. So that's why I'm very concerned, and we're heading in the right direction to have this to Crosley, so anybody can come. Well, certainly we're going to hopefully tell the candidates that they're not gonna come 2 days early because somebody flew them down here and they want to go to an editorial board somewhere. It may be time for the press to get involved later, but I certainly don't want someone that we've narrowed to the 6, all of a sudden, they for a political PAC board or something like that, asking questions that we may be voting on to see what their opinions are. So I'd want to be careful about that. If this commission is not going to support not one of them, if I see that's taking place where I found out they're meeting with somebody one-on-one that we wasn't aware of, that has nothing to do with us or what you're controlling or what staff is controlling from that standpoint, an isolated meeting. That's what I'm very concerned of, that process being hampered. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You put them on notice, Charles. Commissioner DeSabatino?
I just have a question regarding those that are coming here from out of the area. We have 2 locals, so that doesn't apply, but the other 4, do they pay their own travel and expenses?
No.
We pay?
You have to get two.
Well, the others are from Miami, so we gotta pay them too.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Ball?
Well, I just mentioned to the chair that the interviews of the BOCC, where we interview each one individually as a group, Friday, we might want to just cut that back to maybe an hour, 45 minutes to an hour per candidate,
Right.
so that we can get through them all in a more reasonable
With
time.
6 of them anyway. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
You might not have 6 at that point.
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll see. Get out a little early on a Friday, I don't care. All right,
We have to vote, can we let go?
Are we-
We have to rest for tomorrow.
are we good? Are we good? You guys got enough direction? We know what we're doing?
Please.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. Well, there's been a lot of discussion. I know some people probably want to talk, so I'll open it up one more time for public comment. Anybody want to make a public comment on this process? Sometimes it's not easy to figure out where we're going, but I just want to say thank you for being here, for being patient, everybody participating. I think it's going to be good moving forward, so
All right.
we do look forward to it. It's just,
Thank you.
we're 7 individuals, so that's,
Well, it's going to be a really good process and quality candidates, and we'll get your internal candidates' information started very quickly and get the process rolling.
yeah, and they're going to have to figure out whether or not they have to take vacation time to do these things. I mean, we have to be careful to treat everyone the same. I've always thought that was important.
They'll be able to do it if they want the job. They'll get it turned in and work extra hours to make it happen.
Okay, all right. Thank you, and thank you, everybody, for being here. With no further business, we're adjourned.